Chapter 4002. Although Su Lingchong had only himself to blame for what had happened today, if Su Lingchong were to go back and fabricate a different version of the story, making himself the victim, things would become unclear. Su Yuanzheng, for the sake of his grandson, who he had high hopes for, it was not impossible for him to come out and pester Shangguan Tianhua endlessly. However, Shangguan Lan Er's eyeballs spun as she said firmly, "Little junior brother, you don't understand. A scoundrel like Su Lingchong only thinks about how to take over his position all day long, and everything else is fleeting. So he absolutely doesn't dare tell his family about today's matter. Conversely, he has to conceal it everywhere, as he's deeply afraid that his family will know that he's already become a eunuch. Indeed, if his grandfather Su Yuanjing knew, I reckon that he would be reduced to a marginal character." Lin Yi nodded his head in agreement. This point was not hard to understand. No family would let a eunuch take over the position of power. This was a matter without a doubt. Moreover, even if Su Lingchong told his grandfather about the matter, there would not be any benefits for him. Instead, there would be a huge risk, because Shanghai Tianhua would definitely not be indifferent to his only granddaughter's matter. So, there's no need to tell my grandfather about this matter. Otherwise, I and Xiaobai will be in big trouble. I don't know how long we will be confined for. Shanghai Laner stuck out her tongue and said. Lin Yi could not help but laugh when he heard this. No wonder this lass's words were so insightful. It was because of this. This little senior sister's intelligence and wisdom had always been selectively displayed. Su Lingchong disappeared. Looking at the pool of blood in the corner, Shanghai Laner felt some disgust in her heart. After a while, she pulled Lin Yi downstairs. When the two of them went downstairs, the banquet was just reaching its climax. Many important figures were drinking and chatting with each other. They gathered together in twos and threes, trying to win over each other's friendship. Looking at the crowd, Lin Yi paid more attention to the few groups of people. Nantian Ba and a few others were surrounding Su Yuanzheng, fawning over him. As for the law enforcement hall's hall master, Ramjia, the youngest and most dazzling existence among all the important figures, was nowhere to be seen. It was unknown why he had left so early in such an important occasion. Regarding this, Lin Yi had some inexplicable suspicions in his heart. But thinking of Ramjia's arrogance, it was not strange for him to leave on such an occasion. For a banquet of this scale, does Hall Master Ram always leave so early? Lin Yi turned to Shanghai Laner and asked. Shanghai Laner thought for a bit, then shook her head and said, "No, he is the law enforcement hall master. His duty is to maintain order. Normally he stays until the end, and leaves so early unless, if there is a special situation, he will." Special situation. It's nothing. I'm just asking. Lin Yi smiled. Just as Lin Yi was secretly suspicious, an old acquaintance walked in front of him. It was Hong Zhong, the full representative of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. "Young hero Lin, how have you been?" Hong Zhong had a gentle smile on his face, but his words had a deeper meaning. "Manager Hong, how have you been? Thank you for helping me out today." Lin Yi smiled faintly. It was just a simple conversation, but the two of them had a tacit understanding of each other. Lin Yi had admitted his identity to Hong Zhong. After all, if he wasn't Lin Er, he wouldn't have met Hong Zhong at all. There was no way he could say, "How are you?" He was 99% sure that Lin Yi was Lin Er when Hong Zhong stepped up to help Lin Yi out, but it was one thing for him to speculate in private, and another for Lin Yi to admit it in front of him. If Lin Yi did not admit it, then the favor that he had just risked his life to help would be wasted. Of course, from then on, his evaluation of Lin Yi's character and value would be lowered. Fortunately, Lin Yi was not an ungrateful person and did not give him such a chance. Hong Zhong's eyes lit up. He looked at Nan Tianba and the others in the distance and sighed. Young hero Lin is really bold. You are surrounded by strong enemies, but you still dare to appear in this kind of situation. This old man has to say, I admire you. What will come will come. Sooner or later, we can only deal with it when it comes. Lin Yi said with an indifferent expression. To be honest, so many things had happened today that he could not have predicted. If he had known earlier, he would have carefully considered this birthday banquet and whether or not he should have taken the risk to come. However, what should and should not have happened had already happened. No matter how much he regretted it, it was useless. Lin Yi's current mentality was that of a person who did not need to worry when there were so many lice, or in other words, a dead pig did not fear boiling water. In the end, there was no such thing as absolute safety in the cultivation world. Threats always existed. It was just a matter of how big or small they were. Lin Yi had already realized this a long time ago. Young hero Lin is really bold. However, if there is anything you need, there is no harm in telling this old man. Although this old man is a bag of old bones, I can still be of use to deal with a small fry, Hong Zhong said with a smile. Then I thank shopkeeper Hong for his good intentions. Lin Yi said lightly. He did not need external help for the time being, at least not before his identity was discovered. After saying a few words to Lin Yi, Hong Zhong did not stay here for long. After all, his identity represented the Hong Chamber of Commerce, and he was one of the few popular people present. At this sensitive occasion, he could only stop his contact with Lin Yi at most. Otherwise, if he showed too much favor, he would not be helping Lin Yi, but harming Lin Yi. After this, the birthday banquet had completely become a power event for high-level figures, and it had nothing to do with a small figure like Lin Yi. After being forced to stay for a while by Shanghai Laner, Lin Yi finally left early. Compared to watching the power games of these big figures, Lin Yi would rather go back to his cave residence to cultivate. That way, he would at least feel more at ease. Maybe one day in the future, he would also become one of the big figures present, but at least for now, he had no interest in these bullshit things. Now, Su Lingchong had completely become an enemy that would not rest until he was dead. After being turned into a eunuch by a pair of scissors, it was hard to imagine what kind of revenge he would take in the future. Previously, he would abide by the rules of the game of the 3 great pavilions, but in the future it was hard to say. He might personally launch sneak attacks and assassinations. In addition, the threat of Nan Tianba's group had obviously increased. Lin Yi could clearly feel that their suspicions towards him had returned. Chapter 4003. At the same time that Lin Yi went back to his cave to train, Su Lingchong, who had lost a soul, suddenly appeared in a secluded underground secret room. The surroundings were silent and dark, and the only thing he could hear was his own breathing and heartbeat. That bone-chilling feeling that seemed to come from the depths of hell made Su Lingchong, who had lost all hope, wake up. What is this place? Why am I here? Su Lingchong couldn't help but mumble. No one answered his question, so he could only mumble to himself. Immediately after, Su Lingchong subconsciously stretched out his hand to touch his crotch. It was dripping with blood and sticky, and even he couldn't help but feel a chill run down his spine when he touched it. But he had no choice. He had to endure the intense pain and carefully confirm whether his penis was still there or not. At this moment, Su Lingchong was still holding on to a sliver of hope. What if the little curly bear's scissors had actually cut it wrongly? But when he finally confirmed it, he felt a chill in his heart. His manhood had been cut into 2 by the evil little curly bear. Suppressing the fear in his heart, Su Lingchong took out the half that was cut off from his crotch with trembling hands. His face was filled with endless hatred and viciousness. Suddenly, Su Ling quivered, and then a look of ecstasy appeared on his face. This was because he suddenly remembered that reattaching severed limbs was not difficult at all for cultivators, especially high-level cultivators who were proficient in the art of medicine. The 3 pavilions just so happened to have someone like that. Even if his medical skills weren't as high as the legendary miracle Dr. Zhang Liju, he wasn't far from it. If he could get his help, then perhaps he might be able to reattach the broken part of his hand. Thinking of this, Su Lingchong gritted his teeth and forced himself to stand up. After all, no matter how good the medical skills were, there was a prerequisite for reconnecting a broken limb, and that was that it couldn't be for too long. Otherwise, if the broken limb lost its vitality and died, even gods wouldn't be able to do anything. Broken limbs were like that, and this one was even more precious and fragile. Thinking of this, Su Lingchong immediately wanted to find a way out. Up until now, his soul had left his body, and he didn't know how he came to this place. If he wanted to leave, he could only rely on exploring. However, just as Su Lingchong was about to explore this dark place, his eyes suddenly shook slightly. A piece of fluorite appeared out of nowhere and illuminated the surroundings. When he looked around, there were only 4 pitch-black walls in his surroundings, and there was nothing else besides this. Only now did Su Lingchong notice to his shock that a person was shockingly standing less than 3 m away from him. When he suddenly saw this scene, it truly caused Su Lingchong to be terrified to the extreme. After all, with the perception of an expert at the perfection stage of the Foundation establishment realm, even if it was in the darkness, it would be impossible for him to be completely unable to notice the slightest movement of the person's aura. It was absolutely impossible. However, the truth was right before his eyes. Judging from the man's posture, he should have been standing in front of him since a long time ago. Is it a human or a ghost? Su Lingchong forcefully endured the terror in his heart as he asked with a trembling voice. According to his understanding, at such a close distance, only dead people would be able to escape his senses, and it was utterly impossible for living people to do so. Under Su Lingchong's terrified gaze, the other party slowly turned around. His body was covered under a black cloak, and his face was covered with a hideous and terrifying ghost mask, causing others to be unable to see his true appearance. So what if he's human? So what if he's a ghost? Do you think you can resist me? This person's voice seemed to be near and far, causing others to be unable to fathom it, and they were also unable to use this to determine his identity. Su Lingchong's expression froze. Even if the other party didn't reveal any imposing manner, merely from the fact that the other party was able to stand here without him being able to notice it, Su Lingchong was already able to discern that the other party's strength was far above his own, and the other party was utterly not someone he, Su Lingchong, could go against. When he saw Su Lingchong's terrified and vigilant expression, the other party suddenly started laughing, and his laughter carried obvious disdain and contempt. Only when he heard Su Lingchong become enraged did he say, "From now on, whether you want to be a human or a ghost, this is a problem that you have to consider, and not me." Every single word of these words were like a heavy drum that struck onto Su Lingchong's chest, causing him to be unable to breathe. At the same time, he felt terror and trembling from the depths of his soul. "Who exactly are you?" Su Lingchong forcefully gritted his teeth as he asked. "This isn't a problem that you need to be concerned about. Now, throw away that thing in your hand." The masked man's tone caused others to be unable to refuse him. Su Lingchong's heart instantly trembled when he heard this. This was his most precious thing, and he was still thinking of quickly finding someone to take it back. How could he possibly throw it away like this? "I'll count to 3. If you still don't throw it away, then prepare to become a ghost." Even though the masked man's voice was flat, it left no room for doubt. Su Lingchong's heart couldn't help but jerk when he felt the indistinct killing intent on the other party's body, but he was utterly unable to throw it away like this. 3. The masked man directly skipped 1 and 2, and along with his voice, Su Lingchong was terrified to the point of hurriedly wanting to let go. However, it was already too late. A piercing pain suddenly came from his hand, and he actually didn't know what sort of method he used to directly slice off a large piece of flesh, causing it to fall onto the ground along with the other half in his hand, and it was a tragic sight. Very good. If you didn't let go, then the one on the ground would be your entire palm now. Under Su Lingchong's terrified and painful gasp, the masked man smiled in an unfathomable manner. After that, he slowly walked to stand before Su Lingchong, and under Su Lingchong's incomparably shocked gaze, the masked man stomped on the other half of Su Lingchong's hand on the ground to the point it was unrecognizable, and it was forcefully crushed into minced meat. Su Lingchong's eyes almost split open as he watched this scene, and he clenched his teeth tightly as his entire body couldn't help but tremble. His eyes were completely red, and he had an insane expression as if he was prepared to risk everything and fight the masked man to the death. If he had the help of a medical expert earlier, there might still have been hope. But now, that other half of his hand had already become a ball of minced meat, and even a god would be unable to reattach it. At this moment, Su Lingchong was completely disheartened. When he saw the insanity on Su Lingchong's face become more and more intense, and his breathing became more and more coarse, the masked man remained unmoved, and he just stood there and looked coldly at Su Lingchong. After a long time, Su Lingchong finally calmed down once more. Even though the hatred in his eyes didn't reduce, at least he wouldn't madly want to fight the masked man to the death. The masked man couldn't help but laugh in surprise when he saw this. Being able to restrain yourself from making a move against me, this endurance isn't bad. Looks like you aren't a good-for-nothing idiot. Chapter 4004. What exactly is your intention in bringing me to this place? Su Lingchong suppressed the hatred in his heart and asked in a low voice. The masked man laughed lightly and said, "Nothing much. I just saw that you were pitiful, so I helped you." "Helped me?" Su Lingchong couldn't bear to look straight at the pile of minced meat on the ground and said while gnashing his teeth, "Can this be considered as helping me?" "Of course. Let me ask you a question. Do you like women more, or do you like power more?" The masked man said playfully. Su Lingchong was stunned for a moment before slowly replying, "Power." Although women were good things to cultivators who wholeheartedly pursued strength, compared to power and strength, they were really nothing, especially to a person like Su Lingchong who was extremely ambitious. For so many years, he had always spared no effort in pursuing Shangguan Laner. Even if the factor of lust for women was within it, the more essential objective was still to borrow power to rise up. As long as he could successfully rise up at that time, he would have as many peerless beauties as he wanted. Since you want power, then why do you have to rack your brains to keep this thing? The masked man laughed lightly in disdain and then said, "Compared to child's play like climbing up to women, it's far more reliable to strengthen one's own strength. What do you think?" Su Lingchong was asked to the point of being speechless, and only after a long while did he faintly say, "Even if I want to increase my strength, there's no need to be a eunuch, right? What the fuck is the relationship between the two?" "Of course it's related." The masked man snapped his fingers, and an ancient book suddenly appeared before Su Lingchong. The title page was engraved with 4 dark golden words, "Chrysanthemum, Treasured Book." Su Lingchong's eyelids twitched, and he picked up the ancient book under the other party's indication. After he flipped it open, the first sentence that entered his eyes caused him to be shocked speechless. "If you want to cultivate this technique, you must first castrate yourself. This chrysanthemum treasured book is a supreme divine technique. After cultivating it to a profound level, its power is not the slightest bit inferior to the 5 divine techniques that are highly respected on the Heavenly Island, and it might even surpass them. However, there are 2 prerequisites to cultivating it. One is to first castrate yourself, and the second is to have bone-deep hatred. You have already fulfilled these 2 prerequisites." The masked man explained. This. Su Lingchong was instantly shaken. Regardless of whether he dared to face it or not, he had to accept the reality that he had already become a eunuch. In terms of hatred, his hatred towards Lin Yi and Shangguan Laner had absolutely broken through the horizon. With your aptitude and conditions, as long as you concentrate on cultivating the chrysanthemum, treasured chrysanthemum, you will be able to reach within a few months. Only, you will be able. You, at that your strength, you will, you. When he heard this, Su Lingchong fell into deep contemplation. He was able to feel that these words weren't empty words without any basis. But up until now, he still knew nothing about the masked man before him. What was the identity of the masked man? What were his intentions? And why did he want him to cultivate the chrysanthemum treasured book? These were all questions, and the masked man didn't have any intention of explaining. After being silent for a long time, Su Lingchong suddenly fiercely gritted his teeth and said, "Now that things have come to this, I have no other choice. I want this chrysanthemum treasured book." "Very good. I didn't misjudge you. You are indeed a sensible fellow that knows how to adapt to circumstances. Then, from today onwards, you will stay here and cultivate. I will only let you out after you've cultivated to the initial realm. As for the miscellaneous matters outside and at home, I will take care of them for you." The masked man spoke in admiration. Then his figure flashed and vanished from Su Lingchong's line of sight, as if he had never appeared. Who exactly is this fellow that's pretending to be mysterious? Su Lingchong couldn't help but guess in his heart as he gazed at the completely empty chamber. This chamber, including the top and bottom, was completely impenetrable walls, and there was utterly no way out. Even with Su Lingchong's extraordinary eyesight, he was unable to find any gaps, and it was even to the extent that he felt a familiar defensive formation on the walls, and the level of the defensive formation was so high that it was astounding. Yet this masked person had actually vanished into thin air right before his eyes in a place like this. Even with Su Lingchong's experience, such cultivation and strength caused him to be unable to help but be flabbergasted and feel disbelief. Su Lingchong took a deep breath and sat down cross-legged right away before hugging the chrysanthemum treasured book and starting to study it. At any rate, regardless of whether he was willing or not, since the matter had developed to such an extent, if he didn't do as the masked man said and cultivate this chrysanthemum treasured book to the initial realm, then it would probably be difficult for him to see the light of day once more. To the unaware Lin Yi, Su Lingchong's strange encounter was equivalent to doing him a great favor in a disguised form. After all, Su Lingchong had just suffered a tremendous change, and it was the moment where it was the easiest for him to go to the extreme, and it was the moment where he posed the greatest threat to Lin Yi. Yet, he was suddenly forcefully imprisoned by this masked man of unknown origins to cultivate the chrysanthemum treasured book. Not to mention what would happen in the future, at least in a short period of time. Su Lingchong was already unable to pose any threat to Lin Yi, and Lin Yi could concentrate on cultivating for a period of time. On the other hand, Lin Yi didn't intentionally find out where Su Lingchong had gone. Since there was no news of him, he was happy to be idle. Time flashed by, and in the blink of an eye it was the day of the auction. According to the agreement, Lin Yi arrived at the Hong merchant group early in the morning to meet up with Hong Zhong. However, this time he appeared in his original appearance. In any case, Hong Zhong already knew his identity, and the relationship between him and Hong Zhong had already been seen by everyone at the birthday banquet. Rather than hiding his identity as Lin Er, it was better for him to be a bit more above board and directly appear in his original form. This was actually a kind of psychological game. After all, up until now, no matter how much Nen Tianba and the others suspected him, they at least didn't have enough evidence to confirm that he and Lin Er were the same person. Facing Lin Yi's original body, this trace of uncertainty could very likely become an opportunity. On the other hand, if it was Lin Er, the other party could instead confirm and directly make a move. After meeting up with Hong Zhong and exchanging greetings, Lin Yi immediately took out a bag from his bosom and handed it to Hong Zhong, saying, "Shopkeeper Hong, these are some pills that I refined not long ago. Can I pack them up and sell them to your Hong merchant group?" Hong Zhong's eyes lit up, and when he took a look at the cloth bag, he shockingly found that there were a total of 13 pills inside, all of which were Foundation Establishment barrier-breaking pills. What made him even more surprised was that these foundation establishment barrier-breaking pills were all flashing with a layer of pill halo. They were actually all rare top-grade goods. Chapter 4005. 13 pills was not a lot. Although a supreme-grade foundation establishment barrier-breaking pill was rare, it was nothing to be surprised about. However, when these two conditions were stacked together, it was extremely rare. Hong Zhong had been the manager of the Hong Chamber of Commerce for decades, but he had never seen such extravagance. Haha, I am also preparing for the auction. If I do not have enough spiritual jades on hand, it would be useless even if I go to the auction today. Lin Yi smiled faintly. That's right. Although there are many good things in an auction, the price is also high. If you do not prepare enough capital, it will be a pity if you miss out on the treasure in the end. Hong Zhong nodded in agreement. After pondering for a moment, he said, Young hero Lin, I will accept these 13 supreme-grade foundation establishment barrier-breaking pills for 15,000 spiritual jades. What do you think? 15,000 spiritual jades. Hearing that, Lin Yi couldn't help but be a little stunned. He sucked in a cold breath and said, Manager Hong, this price of yours is too high. I'm always taken care of by you. I can't accept this favor. The last time he came to the Hong Chamber of Commerce to sell supreme-grade foundation establishment barrier-breaking pills, it was to compete with you, Jia, for the Star Inkstone. At that time, the price of a single supreme-grade foundation establishment barrier-breaking pill was only worth 800 spiritual jades. 800 spiritual jades per pill. According to this price, 13 supreme-grade foundation establishment barrier-breaking pills would only be worth a little over 10,000 spiritual jades. Compared to the price given by Hong Zhong, it was almost 5,000 spiritual jades. Giving 5,000 spiritual jades in one go was already a big discount for someone of Hong Zhong's level. He could not be said to be unkind to Lin Yi. Hong Zhong immediately smiled and waved his hand. Young hero Lin, you are thinking too much. Normally, the purchase price of a supreme-grade foundation establishment barrier-breaking pill is usually 1,000 spiritual jades, or even higher. The reason why I gave you 800 last time was because you are a newcomer to our business. That's only because you're a newcomer who's trading with us for the first time. Merchants are used to killing people, so they'll definitely lower your price. But even if one pill is 1,000 spiritual jades, it will only be 13,000 spiritual jades? Lin Yi shook his head. That's right. However, in all transactions, other than the usual price as a reference, there is no other way. The final transaction price depends on the market, and right now the market is good. Giving you 15,000 is really not much, Hong Zhong said with a smile. The other party insisted. Lin Yi couldn't refuse anymore and could only shake his head in amusement. Manager Hong, this is the first time I've met someone like you. You're always giving preferential treatment to your customers, and at the same time, you're still trying to find a good excuse. If all the merchants in the world were like you, I'm afraid they'd all go bankrupt from losses. Hong Zhong laughed heartily and personally swiped a spirit jade card for Lin Yi to settle the bill. At the same time, he explained, Young hero Lin, what this old man said just now was not a lie. Auction items are usually jointly provided by various chambers of commerce, and the North Island branch under this old man just so happens to be in need of high-grade auction items these days. Therefore, young hero Lin, your 13 supreme-grade foundation establishment barrier-breaking pills can be considered as timely assistance. This price is absolutely fair and reasonable, since I'm able to help Manager Hong. That couldn't be better. Lin Yi nodded and then asked, By the way, where is the auction? Then where is the auction? Last time, Hong Zhong had said that the auction was not in the inner street of the marketplace. Moreover, he specifically told Lin Yi to come earlier, indicating that the place should not be close, so Lin Yi was quite curious about it. The northernmost island, north of the Heavenly Stage Island, the northernmost island that can be explored. On the map, it's only a small place the size of a palm, but it's the most high-end place in the northern region. It's one of the top 5 heavenly stage islands, a gold squandering den. Hong Zhong introduced to Lin Yi. Although he guessed that Lin Yi must have an extremely deep but unknown background, he already knew that Lin Yi's identity on the surface was just a newcomer of the Blue Cloud Pavilion. For a place like the northernmost island, under normal circumstances, he should not have even heard of it. In fact, although the northernmost island was a famous gold squandering den, it was the exclusive territory of the big shots. Ordinary cultivators were not qualified to enter and exit, and there were very few people who even knew of its existence. People like senior brother Kubai, who had been in the 3 pavilions for some years, knew nothing about it. The northernmost island sounds good. How do we go there? Lin raised his eyebrows and asked. Hong Zhong understood what Lin Yi meant. He shook his head and said, there is no teleportation formation, so the only way to go there is by flying spirit beast. It will take at least 4 hours to fly there, so we have to hurry. While the two were talking, Hong Zhong had already ordered people to get ready. A huge flying spirit beast was on standby on the street. This time, in addition to Hong Zhong and Lin Yi, there were also 2 staff members who were responsible for helping Hong Zhong to go to the auction on the northernmost island. In the midst of whistling, the huge flying spirit beast soared into the sky and flew toward the north at top speed. Standing on the back of the flying spirit beast, Lin Yi could see that in addition to him and Hong Zhong, there were also more than a dozen flying spirit beasts on the North Island at the same time. They took off from different places in the same direction as them, heading toward the northernmost island. Looking at this scene, Lin Yi suddenly noticed that Hong Zhong's expression was a little strange. He could not help but wonder, what's wrong? Is there something wrong? Since it was an auction, the Hong Chamber of Commerce would send people there. Naturally, the 3 pavilions of the North Island and other Chamber of Commerce forces would also send people there. There should be nothing strange about this, right? Nothing. I just think that these people are a little too big. In the past, the North Island auctions would not send so many people at once. Hong Zhong said thoughtfully, pinching his chin. Lin Yi heard the voice and looked over. He found that there were more than a dozen people on the other flying spirit beasts, but there were only 4 people on his side. In contrast, it seemed a lot thinner. According to the past practice, the North Island auctions were held once every 6 months. This frequency was not too high or too low. All the forces on the North Island would send people to participate, but very few people would make such a big fuss. Basically, Hong Zhong and his 2 deputies were enough to deal with it. If more people went there, it would be idle. After all, it was not a fight, but a normal auction transaction. There was no such thing as strength in numbers. However, putting aside the fact that there was only one clan that had mobilized such a large number of people, there were at least a dozen people standing on each of the flying spirit beasts. Some of them even had more people. This was too abnormal. Chapter 4006. Shopkeeper Hao, I haven't seen you for half a year. How are you? So many of you. Are you going to the northernmost island for a big fight? Hong Zhong smiled and said to the leader of the other party, like him, the shopkeeper of the North Island branch of a top chamber of commerce, whose influence was only slightly less than that of the Hong's Chamber of Commerce. He also had a big shop in the inner street of the market. In the past, they often dealt with each other and had some friendship, but in the last half a year, Hong Zhong had never seen him in the inner street. Shopkeeper Hao returned a salute and said in a somewhat indifferent and distant tone, Shopkeeper Hong, you misunderstood me. It's said that the road to the northernmost island is not safe now. It'll be safer to bring more people. Really? Hong Zhong smiled noncommittally. He wanted to ask again, but the shopkeeper had already waved his hand and sped away. Shopkeeper Hong, is the road to the northernmost island very dangerous? Do you need so many people to deal with it? Lin Yi asked when he heard that. After leaving the northern part of the island, there was a boundless ocean below them. If something were to happen to them in such a place, they would really have no one to help them, even if they begged for help. Yes, in addition to the extremely bad weather, we should always be on guard against the powerful spirit beasts hiding under the sea. They have many means of ultra-long distance attack, so even if there are flying spirit beasts, ordinary practitioners can hardly reach the northernmost island safely. Hong Zhong nodded. No wonder. Lin Yi was shocked. He had heard when chatting with the ghost thing that the spirit beast clan on the Heaven Stage Island had gathered a large number of super spirit beasts. But just like the back mountain of the North Island, there were still countless powerful spirit beasts in other places. And the vast sea had always been the breeding place of legendary creatures. According to the ghost thing, even the king of spirit beasts in its heyday, even if he ruled the invincible spirit beast clan, had never conquered the endless sea. The water here was bottomless. No matter how terrifying the fierce creatures appeared, it would not be surprising. However, although the sea is dangerous, as long as there is a master to hold the line, not to wander around randomly and follow the route on the map, it is relatively safe. In fact, it's relatively safe, and the possibility of accidents isn't high. That's why every family in the North Island auction house only sent 3 or 4 people. There's no need to send more than 10 people, unless there's some other reason, Hong Zhong said thoughtfully. As he said that, Hong Zhong wasn't the only one who found it strange. Even Lin Yi, a bystander, could tell that something was amiss. When Hong Zhong greeted the other party, he clearly saw that the other party's flying spirit beast had more than 10 boxes of goods tied to it. In contrast, he only had 2 or 3 boxes on his side. It wasn't just shopkeeper house family that was like this. It was the same for the other chambers of commerce. The meaning behind this was quite thought-provoking. People of the same trade are enemies. These words were indeed true. Lin Yi could already faintly feel that his trip to the Hong Chamber of Commerce's auction would not be so peaceful. What Lin Yi didn't expect was that his premonition would soon become reality. Hong Zhong was an experienced and prudent businessman. Unless it was absolutely necessary, he would never do anything risky. This was the route to the extreme North Island. From beginning to end, he followed the theoretically safest route on the map. This was a route specially designed by an expert, and it stuck close to the edge of the territories of many powerful sea beasts. The chances of being targeted by sea beasts were much lower than other routes. Normally, not only Hong Zhong, but also other people rarely traveled alone. After all, there were countless terrifying sea beasts in the vast sea. Walking randomly was simply playing with your life. No matter how many experts there were, it was useless. However, this time, the other people who set off from the North Island obviously didn't play by the rules. The flying spirit beast under Lin Yi's feet wasn't slow, but just a moment later, he completely lost sight of the other party. It was fine if it was just shopkeeper house family, but more than a dozen other families also didn't take the usual route at the same time. This was too strange. It was obvious that they had discussed it before. What are they going to do? This time, even Hong Zhong couldn't understand. They were all in the same trade, and he had some understanding of these people's temperament. These people were not adventurous people. However, even if he was confused, Hong Zhong couldn't rashly change the route. The other party had a large number of people, and more or less had the capital to take the unusual route. But if he followed them, he would definitely die. For the next half an hour, there was no wind or waves, but both Hong Zhong and Lin Yi guessed that this was only temporary. It couldn't be so calm forever. As expected, amidst the strange calm, the long-brewing crisis suddenly arrived. The flying spirit beast was at a height of 100 feet from the sea, and above it was thick clouds. If it was higher than this, it was easy to get lost, and if it was lower, it was easy to be attacked by sea beasts. This was theoretically the safest height. However, at this height, there was a sneak attack from below without warning. Young hero Lin, stand firm. Before Lin Yi could react, Hong Zhong had already raised his palm and slapped down. There was only a burst of air, and the thin clouds below suddenly burst into a circle of water. This is... Lin, he was secretly shocked. From the beginning to the end, he didn't feel any threat. Even after watching this confrontation, he still couldn't understand what was going on. Hong Zhong explained, "This is the water arrow of the flying swordfish. They can impact and glide up to 300 to 400 feet in the air, and then launch a water arrow attack. The penetrating power and lethality are very shocking. In addition, the water arrow is transparent and silent, and ordinary people can't detect it at all. If you don't guard against them in advance, you will be hit with a little carelessness. In this vast sea, it is a relatively common threat." "I see." Hearing this, Lin Yi understood. If it wasn't for Hong Zhong, just this water arrow could make all of them fall to the bottom of the sea and be buried in the stomach of the fish. However, before Lin Yi had time to rejoice, there was suddenly a cold, murderous intent below him. This time, even he could feel it clearly. Looking down, there were already dozens of holes in the clouds below. Because of the refraction of light, the originally undetectable water arrows were faintly discernible in the air. There were dozens of densely packed water arrows, and every one of them was as fatal as the previous one. This scene was simply enough to make one's scalp tingle. Even Hong Zhong couldn't help but twitch when he saw this scene. He said in a low voice, "We actually encountered a school of flying swordfish? Why is our luck so bad?" Chapter 4007. There was no time to hesitate. Hong Zhong's imposing manner suddenly rose to an unprecedented intensity. Lin Yi and the other two assistants beside him were oppressed by this imposing manner. They almost fell off the flying spirit beast. Fortunately, they reacted quickly enough. Hong Zhong pressed down with one hand, and suddenly a golden light shone for tens of thousands of feet. A giant hand phantom appeared out of thin air, and it directly met the dozens of water arrows and actually forcefully suppressed all of them. This strength really made Lin Yi dumbfounded. He could clearly feel that the power of those water arrows was comparable to his true chi bombs. Dozens of water arrows were dozens of true chi bombs. What kind of terrifying power would they have when added together? Unexpectedly, they were suppressed by Hong Zhong in one move. Usually, Hong Zhong looked like a quiet and honest elder. He didn't expect that when he made a move, he would be so domineering and shocking. Sure enough, a real person doesn't show his true colors. Hong Zhong was really a person who hid his true colors. Suppressing dozens of water arrows with one palm, under the incomparable aura, even the flying spirit beast under his feet was almost hit. It struggled for a moment before it finally managed to stabilize its body. However, before the first wave subsided, another wave arose. Just as this wave of flying swordfish's attack was settled, a strange sound suddenly rang out in the air. At first, it sounded like a woman singing, but at second, it sounded like the ancient Buddhist dhyana language. It concealed profound meaning, causing people to feel an instinctive shudder from the depths of their souls, and then become absent-minded. Divine sense attack. Lin Yi's figure instantly trembled. Although his strength was far from the point of divine sense attack and defense, he already had some understanding of it. Even if he didn't react, the ghost thing would inevitably remind him. This time, it was the ghost thing who took the initiative to block it for him. Be careful. This is the siren's song that destroys people's divine sense. Hong Zhong hurriedly warned. Sirens were one of the most mysterious and powerful sea beasts known to man. They were not very large in size. Their size was not big, and they were far less fierce than ordinary sea beasts. They also didn't have any substantial destructive power. However, they had an extremely troublesome racial talent, which was to destroy divine sense. This talent was so terrible that even a super expert like Hong Zhong had a headache. Although he could protect himself with his strength, it would be very difficult for him to protect these people who were far weaker than him at the same time. What's more, he had just suppressed dozens of deadly water arrows with one palm. At this moment, Hong Zhong was running out of energy. The coordination between the siren and the water swordfish. It was enough to be fatal to anyone. The siren song's sudden attack was different from ordinary attacks. This kind of divine sense attack could be said to be impossible to guard against. Even though Hong Zhong had used all his strength to defend himself, he was still unable to protect Lin Yi and the others. The two assistants, who were slightly weaker, were stunned almost instantly. Their eyes became empty and dark, which was a sign that the siren's song had destroyed their divine sense. Oh no! Hong Zhong's heart skipped a beat. The siren's song had a destructive effect on one's spiritual sense. Once hit, there was no way out. Only a master like Zhang Liju would be able to do something about it. It was obviously over. This was indeed the case. After the two deputies were hit, their spiritual consciousness was destroyed, and they directly became vegetative. They immediately fell from the back of the flying spirit beast. Hong Zhong didn't reach out to save them. 1. He really didn't have the strength to save them. 2. Even if he did, it would be useless. So far, there had never been a precedent of someone surviving after their spiritual consciousness was destroyed by the siren's song. However, what surprised Hong Zhong was that Lin Yi, who was weaker than the two deputies, didn't follow the tragic footsteps of the two. Instead, he looked calm and unmoved, as if he wasn't affected at all. Hong Zhong couldn't help but be surprised. His opinion of Lin Yi rose a notch. Although he wanted to block the siren's song for Lin Yi, the extent of what he could do was very limited. Lin Yi didn't receive any more care than the two deputies. At this moment, he was unharmed. It was really strange. What he didn't know was that Lin Yi's spiritual consciousness was stronger than most people's, and he had a master who could regenerate his spirit. This damn thing could be considered a master in the field of spiritual consciousness. This level of spiritual consciousness attack was nothing to him. However, before Hong Zhong could finish his thought, the flying spirit beast under his feet suddenly trembled, and it started to wobble. It looked like it was going to fall at any moment. Hong Zhong and Lin Yi's expressions changed at the same time. This was the vast ocean, and there was no place to land. There were countless ferocious sea beasts lurking. If they fell, even with Hong Zhong's strength, they would definitely die, let alone Lin Yi, who was only at the intermediate phase of the foundation establishment stage. They're not even letting the flying spirit beasts go. They're trying to kill us. At this critical moment, Hong Zhong gritted his teeth. With the resolve to fight to the death, he used all his spiritual consciousness to help the flying spirit beast resist the threat of the siren song. Seeing this, Lin Yi secretly signaled to the ghost. If it really didn't work, he could only ask the ghost to save them. After all, they were all on the same boat. If the flying spirit beast died, everyone would die. Of course, this was a last resort. Unless it was absolutely necessary, Lin Yi would not dare to expose the ghost's existence in front of Hong Zhong. This secret was very important, and they weren't that familiar with each other yet. Fortunately, after Hong Zhong used all his strength, the flying spirit beast struggled for a while and finally stabilized, allowing Lin Yi to breathe a sigh of relief. He originally thought that he'd finally escaped calamity, yet he never expected that right at this moment, another wave of water arrows shot over violently from below, and it forced Hong Zhong to have no choice but to hastily use his hands to suppress them once more. But this time, it wasn't as straightforward as before. Although Hong Zhong's shocking strength successfully suppressed most of the water arrows, there was a fish that slipped through the net. A water arrow whistled directly towards the flying spirit beast's wing. At this time, it was already too late for Hong Zhong to react. Once the flying spirit beast's wing was injured, it would be impossible for it to fly out of the vast ocean. There was no village ahead or shop behind, and it could only die here. Bang! At the last moment when the flying spirit beast was about to be hit, a powerful palm of vital qi suddenly hit the water arrow. It was from Lin Yi's hand, the 23rd style of the frenzied fire 8 trigrams palm. Beautiful! Seeing this, Hong Zhong's eyes suddenly lit up. This move of Lin Yi's did not directly suppress the water arrow, but it successfully changed the direction of the water arrow, causing it to slightly miss the flying spirit beast's wing. Chapter 4008. Watching the only 2 boxes fall into the sea, Hong Zhong was speechless for a long time, but there was nothing he could do about it. He was still trying his best to resist the siren song, and he couldn't be distracted at all. If he rashly ordered the flying spirit beast to descend in order to chase after the 2 boxes, it would be suicide. Don't forget, there was still the deadly school of water swordfish below. Although Lin Yi could instantly store the 2 boxes of goods into the space of the jade pendant, this was his biggest secret, and he didn't intend to directly expose it. He didn't intend to tell Hong Zhong about the jade pendant for the time being. After a while, the storm finally passed. The school of water swordfish gave up the chase, and the siren that came out of nowhere finally disappeared. The sudden crisis finally came to an end. Looking at the empty scene behind them, Hong Zhong and Lin Yi didn't have the slightest expression of happiness, and they were silent. He hadn't even seen the shadow of the far north island, and his 2 assistants and 2 boxes of auction items were all gone just like that. He had died before he could succeed. This trip hadn't even begun, and he had already hit a head and a face full of dirt. After a long time, Hong Zhong regained his calm expression and said in a deep voice, "Young hero Lin, this old man has implicated you this time. I'm really sorry." "What are you talking about, shopkeeper Hong? I'm already indebted to you for coming all the way here. How can you say that you've dragged me down? Accidents are inevitable." "Shopkeeper Hong, you're exaggerating," Lin Yi quickly said. Hong Zhong shook his head. "It's not an accident. This time's incident was definitely premeditated, and this old man can almost conclude that it was shopkeeper Hao and the others who did it." "Why do you say so? They just left a step earlier. This encounter of ours, it's not necessarily an accident, right?" Although Lin Yi guessed so in his heart, he still asked. "Young hero Lin, you don't know. The school of water swordfish and the sea demons were both rare sea beasts, and they were incompatible with each other. There was absolutely no border between their territories, and under normal circumstances, it would be hard to bump into each other even if one traveled dozens of times. Moreover, both of them met at the same time. There is only one explanation for the situation. Someone specifically used something to lure them here." Hong Zhong said firmly. The road was bumpy, and after 2 hours, Lin Yi and Hong Zhong finally arrived at the northernmost island. Along the way, Lin Yi truly experienced the dangers of the boundless sea. Even though they had already followed the theoretically safest route on the map, they still encountered no less than 3 attacks in 4 hours. One of them was from the sky, and the other 2 were from the sea. With Lin Yi's eyesight, he could tell that each of these 3 attacks was fatal. At the very least, it would not be a problem for it to instantly kill the flying spirit beast below it. It was just that Hong Zhong managed to suppress it in time every time, allowing it to avert danger. It could be seen that it was just as Hong Zhong had said. Although the sea was extremely dangerous, as long as there was a reliable expert holding the fort, it was enough to guarantee one's safety. Alighting from the back of the aerial spirit beast, Zhang Xian looked at the sight before him. Lin Yi couldn't help but take a deep breath. The northernmost island wasn't big, but there was a magnificent and dazzling palace in the center. Shrouded in the 7-colored auspicious clouds, it was faintly discernible, dreamlike, and illusory, as if it was a paradise on earth. A mirage. Lin raised his eyebrows. To be honest, he was quite surprised to see the legendary 7-colored, auspicious clouds in such a place. Hong Zhong chuckled and said, "This is the symbol of the northernmost island. Because of the climate, this place is shrouded in clouds all year round." Later, after it was developed into a gold squandering den, It was artificially transformed into 7-colored clouds. You can't see such a rare sight anywhere else. Linny nodded. At least from the external appearance, the reputation of the northernmost island was well deserved. In addition to the magnificent palace, the security of the northernmost island was also extremely tight. There were 3 layers of guards inside and outside, and all of them wore black armor. Each of them had the strength of at least the middle stage of the Foundation establishment realm, and the leader's rank was even higher. Even during Shanghai Laner's birthday banquet a while ago, the guards were slightly inferior compared to this place. "Let's go," Hong Zhong said and led the way to the palace. Because they were old acquaintances, the guards didn't come over to interrogate them and directly let them pass. However, Lin Yi, who was following behind Hong Zhong, could still feel the countless gazes on him. If he showed the slightest hint of unusualness, he'd probably be instantly arrested by the guards. The pressure they gave off was not any weaker than the enforcers at all. Entering the palace, it could be said to be a completely different world inside. There were pavilions and waterside pavilions, birdsong and the fragrance of flowers. It was completely different from the magnificent layout shown outside. But this difference would not make people feel uncomfortable at all. Instead, they felt that the style and grade were a level higher than that of ordinary palaces. Lin Yi paid a little attention and found that these pavilions and waterside pavilions, in addition to the quiet and elegant appearance that was pleasing to the eye, faintly contained some kind of profound array. He couldn't help but secretly sigh. The person who designed this palace was definitely a talent. Following behind Hong Zhong, Chen Shi passed through a few pavilions and pavilions before his eyes lit up and he arrived at a spacious area. The surroundings were surrounded by a lake, and at the center was an enormous pavilion that was simple, yet didn't lose its grand atmosphere. The pavilion was bustling with activity, and there was a hubbub of voices. Surprisingly, there were already a few dozen people seated there, and manager Hao, whom Chen Shi had just met, was surprisingly amongst them. "This is the auction site?" Lin Yi asked. This leisurely scene was like an outing, and it was a little different from the solemn auction, he knew. Yes, in the past, the auction was always held in this pavilion, and this time should be no exception. However, there weren't so many people in the past. Why are they even here? Hong Zhong frowned, especially after seeing the identity of the people sitting there. He couldn't help but frown even more. Them. Following Hong Zhong's gaze, Lin Yi found that although these people were sitting together and talking loudly, they were also divided into several circles. The largest circle had 20 to 30 people. They were shopkeeper Hao and the other people who set off from the North Island at the same time as Lin Yi had seen before. In addition, there were several other small circles. Although the number of people was smaller, their aura was enough to compete with these people. Among them, there were only 5 or 6 people, but each of them exuded an extremely fierce and dangerous aura, like a fierce beast choosing its prey. Even if the people around them were all experts, they still instinctively felt a chill run down their spines. Even the Spirit Beast clan of the South Island has sent people here. This North Island auction is a bit interesting. The ghost's voice suddenly sounded in Lin Yi's mind. Chapter 4009. In addition to this small circle, there was another small circle that also surprised him. There were only 5 or 6 people, and many of them were strong with unfathomable strength. But these people had one thing in common: they were all women. As far as Lin Yi knew, in addition to Central Island, only West Island was a gathering place for female cultivators. In the other 3 islands, unless there were special cases like Shangguan Laner, female cultivators were rarely seen. So the origin of these people was obvious. Not to mention other people, Lin Yi could now recognize that the spirit beasts of South Island, the female cultivators of West Island, and shopkeeper Hao and the others. This so-called North Island auction had gathered more than 3 island masters. And among the others, there might even be masters from East Island. This wasn't quite the same as what he'd heard from Hongzhong. The North Island auction was held once every 6 months, and normally only the forces of the North Island would participate. The forces of the other islands wouldn't be invited, and they wouldn't participate in the auction. But this time, it was obviously different. In addition to the abnormality that had been discovered on the way before, even Lin Yi, a layman, could clearly conclude that Hong Zhong and the Hong's Chamber of Commerce behind him were obviously cheated. What Lin Yi could see, Hong Zhong naturally knew. Even an old man like him, who was used to all kinds of storms, couldn't help but look gloomy. At this time, a man in white suddenly got up from the pavilion. He gracefully and lightly swept across the lake and appeared in front of Lin Yi and others. He smiled at Hong Zhong and said, "Shopkeeper Hong, how have you been? I've been waiting for you for a long time." Hong Zhong cupped his hands and said, "Housekeeper Song, how have you been? May I ask, is this auction different from the past?" Hearing this, the man who was addressed as Housekeeper Song smiled playfully and said, "Shopkeeper Hong, your question is a little biased. Even though the auction will be held in the extreme North Island, we're only the host and provide the venue. We also send some people to assist you. Everything is decided by you and has never gone through our hands. You should know better than me whether there is any difference." Hong Zhong took a deep look at him and nodded. "That's true. Forgive me for being presumptuous. Then can you tell me when this auction will start, Housekeeper Song?" "I know this. This auction will officially start 3 days later." Housekeeper Song smiled faintly. 3 days later? Hong Zhong's eyes suddenly narrowed. Lin Yi beside him was also surprised to hear this. In the past, the North Island auction was always finished in 1 day. If there was no accident, they could return on the same day. But this time, it was arranged 3 days later. There were indeed many tricks. Housekeeper Song raised his head and glanced at the people in the pavilion in the distance, then looked at Hong Zhong with a playful expression. "For the sake of our many years of friendship, there's no harm in reminding you that this auction is no longer the North Island auction, but the 4 Islands auction fair. In the next 3 days, all the important figures of the other 3 islands will arrive, and even people from the Middle Island will come. For your Chamber of Commerce, this is a rare grand occasion. Take care." After saying this, Housekeeper Song left lightly, leaving Hong Zhong alone in shock and speechless for a long time. "Shopkeeper Hong, if there is anything you need help with, I'm willing to do my best." Lin Yi took the initiative to say, from a simple North Island auction to a 4 Islands auction fair, the style and level of the auction was greatly improved. At the same time, Hong Zhong, who was kept in the dark from the beginning to the end, was ruthlessly slandered. No wonder the other Chamber of Commerce forces brought a lot of goods. If it was just an ordinary North Island auction, it would not be able to consume them at all. But the 4 Islands auction fair was different. All the forces of the 4 Islands would send people over. This was a rare event. No matter how many goods they had, they could be auctioned. For many Chamber of Commerce, this was not only an opportunity to make a fortune, but also an excellent opportunity to enhance their influence. The performance of this 4 Islands auction could even affect the ranking of the major Chamber of Commerce in the Merchant Union. This was a key ranking related to the distribution of the cake. The strong preyed on the weak. This law of nature was vividly reflected in the business world, especially in the Merchant Union, where the competition was extremely fierce. The difference between the top and the bottom was completely different. With a snowball effect, even if there was only a difference of 1 rank, it was not uncommon for the one in front to swallow up the one in behind. This time, the other Chamber of Commerce forces came prepared. Only Hong Zhong and the Hong Chamber of Commerce knew nothing about it. In addition, they were attacked halfway and lost all their goods. It was obvious that they had been targeted by these people. It was obvious that these people were plotting against them. Even if the Hong Chamber of Commerce was a big tree with deep roots, don't forget that the Chamber of Commerce that could deal with them was not weak. If this 4 Islands auction fair was disgraced, It might become their Waterloo afterward. That would be a big scam. Thank you, young hero Lin, for your kindness. Your 13 top-grade foundation establishment bottleneck-breaking pills are already timely help. As for the other things, I will find a way to solve them. Hong Zhong smiled, regaining his usual calmness. Because Lin Yi's 13 top-grade foundation establishment bottleneck-breaking pills were added at the last minute before the departure, they were not packed together with the other goods. Instead, Hong Zhong kept them with him, which was a blessing in disguise. In addition, even if the 2 boxes of auction items were lost, as long as they reacted in time, there was still a way to replenish them before the auction. So there was no need to worry too much. After saying that, Hong Zhong did not go to the pavilion to exchange greetings with those so-called old acquaintances. Instead, he directly took Lin Yi to the room, while he himself did not stop. He immediately used the messenger eagle to inform the headquarters of the Hong Chamber of Commerce on Middle Island and the branches on other islands about what he had just learned. Although there was no teleportation array on the extreme North Island, there was one on the North Island. Moreover, the branch on the North Island had a special fast way to contact the headquarters of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. As long as the messenger eagle was sent back to the branch on the North Island, and the news was sent back through the branch on the North Island, they would get a response within a day. This time, the Hong Chamber of Commerce did not receive any news about this 4 islands auction fair, nor did they make any preparations in advance. Fortunately, there were still 3 days. If they reacted in time, there was still a way to remedy the situation. Chapter 4010. These pavilions were not only beautiful and refreshing, but they were also a combination of different types of entertainment. In just an hour, Lin Yi had already passed a couple of casinos. These were things that normal people loved, but to strong practitioners it was a rare pastime. Lin Yi had seen such places before, not to mention that he was not interested in these things at all. Even if he had such an idea, he would not rashly spend money in a place he was not familiar with. Otherwise, he would be cheated. In addition to the entertainment venues in the far North Island, Lin Yi also saw many merchants who were exhibiting their treasures in various pavilions. As Steward Song said, this was the 4 Islands auction fair, and the final auction was set in 3 days. These 3 days were the time for the chambers of commerce to display their treasures, to accumulate popularity in advance and attract as many potential buyers as possible so that they could get as high a price as possible in the auction 3 days later. This was the significance of exhibiting treasures. Before the auction began, the smoke of gunpowder had already spread. However, for the Hong Chamber of Commerce, who knew nothing about it beforehand, the precious 3 days would inevitably be wasted. Even if Hong Zhong could take remedial measures in time, it would take at least 2 or 3 days to transport the goods from the headquarters in Middle Island. It was impossible for him to make it in time. Of course, these things had nothing to do with Lin Yi for the time being. Even if he wanted to help Hong Zhong, he was basically powerless. The only thing he could do now was to find his target auction item. Of the 7 materials listed by the King of Junk, except for the mysterious water droplet, which had been bought from the Hong Chamber of Commerce, he had to find a way to collect the remaining 6 materials in this auction. If it was just an ordinary North Island auction in the past, there might be some missing materials. But this time the momentum was so great that, as long as he was determined to find them, he would have a great chance to collect all of them. As expected, after walking around, Lin Yi had already found 4 of the materials. This was based on the fact that the exhibition had just begun, and many merchants had not taken out all the auction items yet. If nothing went wrong, he should be able to find the remaining 2 materials in the next 2 days. The night passed peacefully, and Lin Yi went to look for Hong Zhong the next morning. The usually calm and collected elder's face was surprisingly pale, and his eyes were bloodshot. It seemed like he hadn't slept the entire night and had been working himself to the bone. "Manager Hong, the situation is not optimistic?" Lin Yi asked. He came here with Hong Zhong, so they were on the same boat. Coupled with their past friendship, he would not hesitate to help Hong Zhong if he needed any help. Young Master Lin, good morning. Hong Zhong forced a smile on his face. He did not hide anything from Lin Yi and admitted, "That's right. I just received a reply this morning. Our Hong merchant group has been buried in a trap set up by others." How could it be? Lin Yi couldn't help but be slightly stunned and asked doubtfully, "The Hong Chamber of Commerce is a big business. Even if others want to join forces to target us, it won't be so easy, right?" Hong Zhong shook his head and sighed. "That being said, we have now become the target of public criticism, and the other party has been planning for a long time. Not only did they deliberately block the news of the auction from us, but even our material reserves were consumed and purchased in advance, including the headquarters in Middle Island and the other 3 branches. There was a serious shortage of goods that could be auctioned at the same time. In the past few days, they were bought in batches, which was really unexpected." Lin Yi was stunned when he heard this. Even a layman like him knew that a business giant like the Hong Chamber of Commerce must attach great importance to the stock of goods. Even if there was a shortage in a short period of time, there must be channels to quickly replenish it. To cause a serious shortage in all the headquarters in Middle Island and the 4 branches, and to be stuck at this critical time, the difficulty could be imagined. If that's the case, then it's true that they've been planning this for a long time. But the reason they're going through all this trouble is probably not just this 4 Isles Auction Expo. I'm afraid they're planning something even more troublesome later on. That's true. The other party is coming with great ferocity this time, and the auction is just the beginning. If we appear to be too weak and are caught by others, our Hong Chamber of Commerce might really face an unprecedented crisis," Hong Zhong said worriedly. The other party was an alliance of many forces. In the beginning, many of them might only be in a wait-and-see state. However, if the Hong Chamber of Commerce appeared too weak and was thought to be profitable, they would finally swarm over, and the end would not be far. On the contrary, in this 4 Islands auction fair, if the Hong Chamber of Commerce had a way to safely get through the crisis and show a deep foundation, then these forces would automatically retreat, and the danger would be easily solved. Manager Hong, if we can prepare enough auction items in a short period of time, will we be able to deal with this crisis? Lin Yi suddenly asked thoughtfully. Hong Zhong nodded and said, "That's right. But for an auction of this level, the ordinary level of goods are not good enough. Even if they are shipped over, it will only make people laugh. And for goods that are good enough, there is no way to replenish them in a short period of time. It really makes people feel helpless. Then are elixirs like the best grade foundation, establishment, bottleneck breaking elixir good enough?" Lin Yi asked again. Of course. Experts in the foundation establishment stage are the foundation and backbone of every force. For them, the best grade foundation, establishment, bottleneck breaking elixir is a treasure that can only be found by luck. It is even more sought after than some divine weapons. For any force, it can be regarded as a strategic level elixir, an existence that has a price but no market. Hong Zhong nodded affirmatively. Hearing this, the corner of Lin Yi's mouth slightly curved up. If that's the case, then I should be able to help a little. Since they are all holding the 4 Islands auction fair, how about we hold a best grade elixir fair? Best grade elixir fair. Hong Zhong's eyes lit up, and he quickly said, "Could it be that young Hero Lin still has a lot of best grade elixirs on hand?" No. Lin Yi shook his head decisively. 2 best grade foundation, establishment, bottleneck breaking elixirs were given to Shangguan Laner, and the 13 best grade foundation, establishment, bottleneck breaking elixirs were all sold to Hong Zhong. He did not have any elixirs left. Then, where did this best grade elixir fair come from? Hong Zhong could not help but be a little disappointed. Chapter 4011. Even someone like Hong Zhong, who was used to all kinds of situations, was stunned by these domineering words. After a while, he said, "Master Lin, we only have 3 days left. Are you really confident that you can concoct a large amount of elixirs? And they have to be of the highest quality?" One couldn't blame Hong Zhong for being puzzled. Anyone with a bit of common sense would be puzzled. Everyone knew that concocting elixirs was a very time-consuming and laborious. A weaker elixir refiner might not even be able to concoct a single elixir in 3 days. As for the highest quality elixirs, unless it was an elixir god like Zhang Liju, even a slightly weaker elixir refiner couldn't guarantee it. After so many interactions, Hong Zhong was 100% sure that Lin Yi could concoct elixirs of the highest quality, but to say that he could concoct a large amount in 3 days was too much. "Let's try it. We don't have any other ideas anyway. Why don't we give it a try?" Lin Yi smiled faintly. Since Lin Yi said so, Hong Zhong didn't have any other ideas. He just nodded. "If that's the case, then I'll have to trouble you, Master Lin. I'll thank you after this is done. I'll go prepare now." Hong Zhong immediately went to prepare the ingredients, and Lin Yi, on the other hand, asked for a special guest room and closed his eyes to rest. This time, the reason why he offered to help was because he had thought it through. 1, he could return Hong Zhong's previous favors and deepen their relationship. 2, if he showed his great value in front of Hong Zhong, it would be easier for them to work together in the future. An hour later, Hong Zhong brought a few people with him and moved a few sacks of elixirs. In order to save time, he bought these from Steward Song. These elixirs weren't considered important resources here, and they could be bought with spirit jade. The elixirs that could be concocted with these ingredients were similar to the foundation-breaking elixirs, which were commonly used by foundation establishment practitioners. Since Lin Yi could concoct the foundation-breaking elixir, naturally he could concoct these elixirs as well. He even gave Lin Yi a few recipes as well. It was an early reward for Lin Yi. After all, to an elixir refiner, every recipe was extremely valuable. After roughly sorting out the ingredients, Lin Yi asked Hong Zhong to find someone to borrow a pill refining room and entered into a state of isolation. Time was limited, and it was time for the Shinnong's cauldron to shine. Lin Yi had never come into contact with these elixirs before. After all, there weren't any foundation establishment practitioners in the mortal world. There were no elixirs to speak of. However, this didn't stop him from concocting. Even if it was a pill he'd never seen before, elixir making was still the same. Don't forget that he still had Zhang Liju's notes in the common world. Even if he used it as a reference when making foundation-building elixirs, it'd still be very useful. What was worth mentioning was that when he was studying these notes, Lin Yi had received quite a bit of inspiration. It wasn't related to elixir concocting, but it was a killer move that could completely surpass the Super Chi bomb. However, it was still in the testing phase, and he hadn't fully mastered it yet. Other than the help of Zhang Liju's notes, the Shinnong cauldron, under Han Jingjing's genius modifications, had become a complete semi-automatic elixir concoction artifact. This semi-automatic only required Lin Yi to manually inject his qi into the cauldron, and everything else was done by the cauldron itself. Even elixirs that it had never come into contact with before were no problem. As long as the recipe was inputted, the cauldron would automatically analyze the elixir concoction curve, and the rest couldn't be any simpler. Following the instructions of the cauldron, he would put in the ingredients and carefully inject his qi, waiting for the elixir to come out. 2 hours later, the first batch of elixirs came out, and the results were just as Lin Yi had expected. As an experiment, he put in 5 portions of ingredients at once, and this time, 3 pills came out successfully, while the other 2 were useless. The first experiment had a 60% success rate, and for any elixir refiner, this was already an exaggeration. The Shinnong cauldron's performance, after that, was the true proof of its legendary abilities. The same elixir, the second batch had a success rate of 80%, and from the third batch onwards, the success rate had stabilized at 90% and above, even approaching 100%. Each time, the cauldron would automatically correct the pill concoction curve, and step by step, it would increase the already shocking success rate to an unparalleled level. The first 2 batches still had some failures, but after that the failures pretty much disappeared. This was the true strength of the Shinnon cauldron. For 2 whole days, Lin Yi didn't go out and had been refining elixirs with all his might. Hong Zhong didn't know what was going on inside. But even if Lin Yi couldn't refine enough top-grade elixirs, his gratitude to Lin Yi didn't diminish in the slightest. The only 2 boxes of auction items were dropped halfway, and the central island and the other 3 islands were short of supplies at the same time. The sudden 4 Islands Auction Expo suddenly pushed Hongzhong to the heart of the struggle. According to this development, the Hong Chamber of Commerce would inevitably fall into disgrace. Not to mention what more dangerous and fatal actions those people would take in the future. At least for Hongzhong, his career as a sole shopkeeper would come to an end. In order to intimidate people and to give everyone an explanation, the Hong Chamber of Commerce would definitely push him out as the scapegoat for this incident. They would blame him for the root cause of this failure. This was a logical thing to happen and no one could change it. Therefore, forced by the situation, Hongzhong, who was originally omnipotent, was now left with one last life-saving straw because he was being targeted by others, and that was Lin Yi. If Lin Yi succeeded, then he would be able to escape. If not, then there was nothing he could do, and he could only resign himself to fate. That was the truth. In the 2 days that Lin Yi was concentrating on refining elixirs, Hongzhong and the other potential opponents didn't just sit around and do nothing. They gathered together and found Steward Song. Tomorrow is the auction. Looking at the time, if Hongzhong has a way to transfer supplies from other places, he should be able to arrive today. Although this possibility is not high, we can't be careless. The first person to speak was Hongzhong's old acquaintance, shopkeeper Hao. Chapter 4012. Hearing this, everyone smiled knowingly. The so-called Anti-Flood Alliance was formed by the alliance of the 5 largest merchant guilds in the Merchant Union. Each of them was ranked in the top 10, and among them the merchant guilds behind shopkeeper Hao and the yellow-haired man were the strongest. Behind shopkeeper Hao was the Wealthy Metropolis Association, which was ranked 3rd in the Merchant Union. The yellow-haired man's name was Wang Tong, and behind him was the All-Access Assembly, which was ranked 4th in the Merchant Union. In addition to the other 3 top 10 merchant unions, with such a luxurious lineup, even the Hong Merchant Union, which was ranked 2nd in the Merchant Union, would not be able to handle it. As for the first, it was the 5 Elements Pharmacy, a subsidiary of the Pill Hall. It was founded by the Pill God Zhang Liju. Naturally, no one dared to do anything to it. This 4 Islands Auction Expo was only the first battle of the Anti-Flood Alliance. There would be a series of actions after that, and they only had one goal: to divide and devour the giant that was Hong Merchant Union. Seeing that no one took it seriously, shopkeeper Hao cautiously reminded, "Everyone, this is the first battle of our Anti-Flood Alliance, and it is also a crucial battle. The higher-ups of each family are watching this matter closely, and the success or failure of this battle is related to everyone's future, so there is no room for error. Although Hongzhong has become a turtle in a jar, this old man thinks that it is better to be careful lest we fail miserably." That's right, shopkeeper Hao, you're right. Hongzhong has been in the North Island for decades, and he's seen his fair share of storms and waves. Who knows, he might have some sort of emergency plan that no one knows about, and it'll be hard to defend against it. One mistake, and we'll fail. Young Master Wang, it's better to be careful, the others agreed. Wang Tong was the young master of the All-Tong gathering, and he was already very pleased with himself. But after hearing the words of shopkeeper Hao and the others, he frowned. It's said that the older one gets, the more timid they become. This saying is absolutely true. I've long since guessed that Hongzhong would be helpless. However, since you all insist on being careful, I'll let you do as you please. However, I'll have to trouble myself to inquire about something. Since he has already fallen to such a state, how are you all going to guard against him?" Wang Tong asked with disdain. Shopkeeper Hao chuckled in an experienced and prudent manner. "Young shopkeeper Wang, don't worry. This old man has a way to ensure that nothing goes wrong. However, this matter will require housekeeper Song's assistance." A voice came from outside. "You need me to do it? Is there anything I can help you with?" Seeing housekeeper Song step into the room as if no one else was present, everyone present stood up in succession to greet him. In this northernmost island, housekeeper Song had full authority over everything. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that he was the master of this place. Shopkeeper Hao cupped his hands and smiled. A straightforward person doesn't beat around the bush. We naturally can't hide our affairs from housekeeper Song, so I'll be frank with you this time. If nothing unexpected happens, the Hong Merchant Group will most likely think of a way to send a batch of supplies over today as emergency supplies for tomorrow's auction. This is a rare opportunity to crush the Hong Merchant Group. We definitely won't allow them to escape from death. So we'd like to ask housekeeper Song for a small favor. You want me to stop them halfway? Manager Song smiled spuriously as he swept his gaze over everyone and spoke with a profound meaning. That's right. On this northernmost island, only your northern garrison has the strength and the guts to do this. It's just a piece of cake for you to stop them. We are willing to pay you 10,000 spiritual jades as compensation. What do you think? Shopkeeper Hao suggested respectfully. 10,000 spiritual jades? Housekeeper Song raised his eyebrows and grinned. Shopkeeper Hao, you've said it yourself. I'm the only one who has the strength and the guts to do this. Once we do this, it means we're going to turn against the Hong Merchant Group. Am I that stupid in your eyes that I would openly offend the Hong Merchant Group for some spiritual jades? Shopkeeper Hao said calmly, "You don't have to worry, housekeeper Song. As long as our anti-flood alliance is here, the Hong Merchant Group will soon cease to exist. Moreover, even if they know it's your northern garrison who did this, their number one enemy is us. They won't spare their energy to deal with you. What do you think? What's more, you don't need to waste your manpower this time. All you need to do is send an order for the northern garrison to make some extra money. You can easily get 10,000 spiritual jades. Why not?" Housekeeper Song couldn't help but laugh when he heard this, as expected of an experienced businessman. Shopkeeper Hao's words do make some sense. However, you seem to have forgotten something. I, Song, and shopkeeper Hong Zhonghong have been friends for decades. Even if we aren't brothers, we are at least old friends, so... Everyone's heart skipped a beat. So? Housekeeper Song smiled. So, don't you think we need to add more spiritual jades to hit an old friend when he's down? Ah, I see. Everyone couldn't help but feel that it was ridiculous, because it was an old friend. Not only did they have to accept the job, but they also had to pay more. Housekeeper Song's logic was really invincible. Well, 15,000 spiritual jades. Are you satisfied, Housekeeper Song? Shopkeeper Hao reacted and said quickly, the 5 merchant unions were among the top 10 merchant unions. This amount of spiritual jades was nothing to them. Then you can wait here for my news. Housekeeper Song nodded in satisfaction. He immediately turned around and left. Making 15,000 spiritual jades with a simple order was like a pie falling from the sky. It would be a waste not to take it. As for the fact that he was Hong Zhonghong's old friend, although it was not a lie, how could he reject someone who was giving him spiritual jades for free? A whole day passed in a flash. Shopkeeper Hao, Wang Tong, and the others had been waiting in the living room. However, the news they expected never came. It wasn't until the sun had set that they saw Housekeeper Song slowly walk in. He had a playful smile on his face. The northern garrison has called off their troops. The extreme north island has been sealed. It seems that the Hong Merchant Union won't be sending any more supplies here before tomorrow's auction. You can pay the promised 15,000 spiritual jades now." Hearing that, everyone let out a sigh of relief. The possibility that Hong Zhonghong was at his wits' end was theoretically the highest. Naturally, it was within their expectations. The 15,000 spiritual jades were just to buy some peace of mind and eliminate the last possibility. Chapter 40:13. Shopkeeper Hao and the others looked at each other and didn't say anything. They were all experienced and prudent businessmen. Spending this amount of spiritual jades could crush Hong Zhong's last hope of making a comeback. It wasn't a loss at all. After taking the spiritual jades, Steward Song suddenly said with a half-smile, "I've always been kind. I didn't manage to intercept the Hong Chamber of Commerce's goods this time, but I took 15,000 spiritual jades from you for nothing. Although it's reasonable, I still feel bad about it. So, why don't I give you a piece of information?" Everyone had a strange look on their faces. If he really felt bad about it, why did he take the spiritual jades so quickly? "What is it? Please tell me, Steward Song." Shopkeeper Hao cupped his hands and asked. Steward Song smiled. "You've all been here discussing important matters today, so you haven't paid much attention to what's going on outside. I guess you don't know that the Hong Chamber of Commerce has joined the auction half an hour ago, right?" "What?" Everyone's expression changed. They were all dumbfounded and couldn't say a word for a long time. They had been discussing how to deal with the Hong Chamber of Commerce from the beginning to the end. They had even taken out a large amount of spiritual jades to ask the Northern Garrison Guards for help, just for the slightest possibility. They had never thought that Hong Zhong would have the capital to participate in the auction. Participate in the auction? How is it possible for him to take out an auction item now? Shopkeeper Hao and the others couldn't help but exclaim. 2 boxes of goods had fallen into the sea, which also cut off the Hong Chamber of Commerce's supply line. No matter how they thought about it, it was impossible for that to happen. Unless someone had sold Hong Zhong the materials they were going to auction in advance. None of the people present were stupid, and they quickly thought of this possibility. Then their expressions became ferocious and unfriendly. "How dare they do such a thing behind our backs? Do they think our anti-flood alliance is nothing?" Steward Song couldn't help but laugh. "Everyone, you've probably misunderstood. The things that Hong Zhong has brought out for sale this time are quite shocking. It's not something that any Chamber of Commerce would be able to bring out. No one would be stupid enough to sell such a strategic resource to him in private. It can be seen that this old friend of mine has long been prepared and has played a good trick on everyone." Upon hearing this, the faces of manager Hao Wang Tong and the others turned even uglier. Without further ado, they rose to their feet and left the room. They were eager to see what this old man Hong Zhong had to offer. Seeing their expressions, Steward Song cursed in his mind. What a bunch of idiots! Who else would they cheat if not their spiritual jades? The group of people quickly arrived at the pavilion that the Hong Merchant Group had booked for the exhibition. As his assistant had died halfway, Hong Zhong, as the manager, could only personally attend to the event. Even Lin, he had to help from the side. The pavilion wasn't big, and the items that the Hong Chamber of Commerce took out for exhibition weren't big either. They could barely fill up a row of display racks. However, the items displayed on the row of display racks caused even the experienced and knowledgeable shopkeepers of the large chambers of commerce to stare with their eyes wide open. How is that possible? Wang Tong, who was the most impatient among them, was stunned. More than 100 elixirs. Even the experienced shopkeeper, Hao couldn't help but feel his temples throbbing. His heart almost exploded from the shock. In any auction, supreme-grade elixirs were always the best. It was already good enough to get 3 or 4 of them, let alone 100. It was simply unimaginable, unless they had a pill god like Zhang Liju at home. From the expected emptiness to suddenly conjuring a full 100 top-grade medicinal pills. This sudden change of events was too shocking and heaven-defying. Yo, we meet again. How have you been these past few days? Does my humble shop's small business catch everyone's attention? Hong Zhong smiled innocently as he enjoyed everyone's deflated expressions while swallowing their eggs. What the hell? Everyone couldn't help but want to vomit blood again. A total of more than 100 top-grade medicinal pills. And he actually said that it was a small business that didn't enter his eyes. Then what were they? After plotting and spending so much effort, not only were they unable to suppress Hong Zhong and the Hong Merchant Group, they had instead caused such an embarrassing and shocking scene. At this moment, the expressions of manager Hao Wang-tong and the others were truly so gloomy that water could be seen. Although Hong Zhong was an honest elder, what he said at this time was really infuriating. Lin Yi snickered as he watched from the side. The impact and shock brought about by more than 100 top-grade elixirs was something that even the most experienced and knowledgeable person would not be able to endure, not to mention this group of people behind the scenes who schemed to bring down the Hong Chamber of Commerce. In fact, not only these people, even the big shots from Middle Island who came late also came to join in the fun. They all looked surprised and whispered to each other, praising the elixirs. In the crowd, a figure in yellow suddenly made Lin Yi's eyes light up. He looked carefully, and Lin Yi's mind went blank. He couldn't help but exclaim, "Tian Chan?" Voice, appearance, speech, and mannerisms, no matter which point it was, proved that the woman in the crowd was Tian Chan. However, hearing Lin Yi's exclamation, Tian Chan didn't show any unusual reaction. She just glanced at him indifferently, and her gaze directly passed by Lin Yi. It was as if she didn't recognize Lin Yi at all. Lin Yi was stunned. This person was obviously Tian Chan. There was no way she could be wrong about this. But he wasn't wearing the 1,000 silk mask. How could she not recognize him? When Lin Yi wanted to say something, Tian Chan had already left with the big shots from Middle Island. From beginning to end, she didn't look at Lin Yi again, not even once. He frowned as he watched Tian Chan leave with the others, as if she didn't know him at all. Lin Yi froze. It was impossible for him to be wrong. But Tian Chan's expression from beginning to end didn't show any abnormality or abnormality. She was completely like a stranger, which was incomprehensible. What's going on? Lin Yi looked at Tian Chan's back and took a deep breath. After coming to Heavenly Island for so long, Tian Chan was the first secular practitioner he had seen other than Kong Mingming, Zhong Pingliang, and others. Moreover, she was a woman who had a close relationship with him. Young hero Lin, what's wrong? Is there a problem? Hong Zhong noticed Lin Yi's strangeness and took the initiative to ask. Chapter 4014. Shopkeeper Hong, are those people from Middle Island? Lin Yi asked. That's right, not only are they from Middle Island, but they also have a strong background. Hong Zhong paused. Master Lin, did you notice the 5 colors on their sleeves? That's the symbol of 5 Elements sect, which is the 5 Elements Pharmacy of Middle Island. 5 Elements Pharmacy? Lin Yi's eyes lit up as he thought about it. Although it's called a pharmacy, it's the #1 super business group in the Merchant Alliance. It's under the jurisdiction of the Hall of Elixirs, and I'm sure you know the person in charge of the Hall of Elixirs, Miracle Dr. Zhang Liju, Hong Zhong said with admiration. After hearing this, Lin Yi was even more stunned. If that was the case, Tian Chan was from the 5 Elements Pharmacy. Didn't that mean that she was Zhang Liju's disciple? She was teleported to Middle Island. From the common world, different people would be teleported to different places. This was a very normal speculation, but Lin Yi always thought that a girl like Tian Chan would be teleported to West Island, where female practitioners gathered. He didn't expect this result. But even if Tian Chan was teleported to Middle Island and became a member of the 5 Elements Pharmacy, it didn't make sense for them to be strangers, right? What did this mean? Shopkeeper Hong, Do you have any way of finding out where these people live? Lin Yi thought about it and lowered his voice. Lin Yi didn't believe that Tian Chan didn't recognize him. How long had it been? It was completely unrealistic. He had to find a way to figure out the reason. Besides, the relationship between him and Hong Zhong was far from what it was before he came here. They were in the same boat, and he didn't need to be too cautious. He could just ask directly. As expected, although Hong Zhong was a little surprised, he didn't ask too many questions. He replied softly, "I'm not sure about that, but according to the usual practice, the North Island has always arranged for important guests to stay in the core, the Hall of Heroes. These people are from the Five Elements Pharmacy, so they should be staying there. Gathering Hall of Heroes. All right, I'll remember it. Thank you." Lin Yi nodded. He was almost done here, so Lin Yi slipped out. He couldn't wait to find Tian Chan and ask about the situation. Watching Lin Yi leave, Hong Zhong smiled as expected and said to himself, "This young hero Lin seems to have some relationship with the Five Elements Pharmacy. He's really unfathomable. But in less than 3 days to be able to make hundreds of top-quality elixirs, even in the entire Five Elements Pharmacy, other than the elixir god Zhang Liju, there's probably no one who can beat him." Hong Zhong shook his head and sighed. He did not think too much about it and turned around to deal with shopkeeper Hao Wangtong and the others. This time, he was nearly forced into a corner by these people. He had to take advantage of this opportunity to slap their faces back. As for Lin Yi, everyone had their own secrets. An experienced person like Hong Zhong naturally knew that knowing too much might not be a good thing. The most important thing now was to get Lin Yi on his side and try to pull him to his side. Other than that, everything else was unnecessary. On the other hand, Lin Yi had already made a round in the North Island. After a few turns, he quickly arrived at the entrance of the Hall of Heroes. However, he was stopped by someone. This is an important place for important guests. Unauthorized personnel are not allowed to enter. The person in front of Lin Yi was a guard in black armor. It was the symbol of the North Island, the North Guard. "I have a friend who lives inside, and I just want to talk to him. Can you guys make an exception?" Lin Yi tried to ask. The North Guard responded expressionlessly, "Unless you have a pass or someone comes out to pick you up, please go back. Don't ask for trouble." As they spoke, the North Guard showed an aggressive and fierce aura. It seemed that if something went wrong, they would kill Lin Yi on the spot the next moment. Lin Yi's eyelids twitched. He was only in the middle stage of the Foundation establishment realm. Each of the North Guard in front of him was stronger than him. If he really fought, he would be courting death. He could only nod and retreat. After that, Lin Yi walked around the Hall of Heroes again and found that there was a sentry every few steps. There was no flaw at all. He had no choice but to give up the idea of waiting for an opportunity to sneak in. Looking at the Hall of Heroes from afar, Lin Yi could only shake his head and sigh. It seemed that if he wanted to meet Tian Chan again, he would have to wait until tomorrow's auction. The next morning, the northernmost island was bustling with noise. Lanterns and streamers were hung up and down. It was a festive scene. If it was just the usual North Island auction fair, which was held once every 6 months, it would not be so rare. However, this time it was a rare Four Islands auction fair, which might not happen even once in decades. Following the crowd, Lin Yi and Hong Zhong came to the largest pavilion on the northernmost island. This was the ultimate venue of the auction. All the auction items would be competed here. The final winner would be revealed here. Seeing the appearance of Hong Zhong and Zhang Xian, an uproar broke out at the scene. The incident of the Hong Chamber of Commerce suddenly taking out more than 100 top-grade elixirs yesterday evening had already spread throughout the entire northernmost island. Everyone knew about it. The faces of manager Hao Wangtong and the others who had arrived long ago darkened. They had put in so much effort to deal with the Hong Chamber of Commerce this time, but in the end, before the auction even started, their plot had already been foiled. It was neither early nor late. At the last moment of the 3-day exhibition, they suddenly took out more than 100 top-grade elixirs. Even if everyone thought with their toes, they could figure out that they had been fooled by Hong Zhong, the old man. Not only them, but even housekeeper Song, who sold the medicinal herbs to Hong Zhong, was shocked for a long time when he heard the news. Like everyone else, housekeeper Song did not believe that someone could refine so many top-grade elixirs in such a short time. The only reasonable explanation was that Hong Zhong had secretly hidden them long ago and only took them out at the last moment to slap these people in the face. The previous purchase of medicinal herbs was just to cover up this despicable and shameless old man. Wang Tong and the others gnashed their teeth in hatred. It was not easy to find an opportunity to drag the giant Hong's Chamber of Commerce down, but they did not expect it to be like this. All the previous plans were simply a joke. They really felt that they were blind. Chapter 40:15. Of course, it was not hard to understand why the Five Elements Pharmacy did not go all out this time. However, the wealthy families and the Wantong Grand Festival were trying their best to crush the Hong Chamber of Commerce this time. This time, they had definitely made full preparations beforehand. However, even if they added all of them together, the number of top-grade elixirs was only a fraction of what the Hong Chamber of Commerce had. This really made people speechless. Shopkeeper Hong, it seems that not only will the Hong Chamber of Commerce not fail miserably this time, but it will also shine brightly. After making such a great contribution, I believe that after this, your position in the Hong Chamber of Commerce will be promoted. This is really worthy of celebration. Housekeeper Song congratulated Shopkeeper Hong in front of everyone. Not at all. The auction hasn't started yet. Housekeeper Song's words might be overpraising me. Hong Zhong smiled humbly. That being said, any normal person would know that top-grade elixirs were strategic resources that would never be auctioned off. Even if the auction had yet to start, just the fact that there were more than 100 top-grade elixirs that had already appeared was already destined for the Hong Chamber of Commerce to take the lead and become the biggest winner of this Four Islands Auction Expo. There was absolutely no possibility of an accident. In comparison, the other large chambers of commerce, such as the wealthy guilds and the all-access gatherings, were nothing. Even the number 15 Elements Pharmacy could only stand aside this time. They were not on the same level as the Hong Chamber of Commerce at all. Being humble is not a bad thing, but being overly humble is a little pretentious. Never mind. After this is over, I will hold a banquet to welcome you. Let us brothers catch up. Housekeeper Song laughed loudly and turned to walk up to the stage. This time he would personally be the host of the Four Islands Auction Expo. This Housekeeper Song is really practical. Lin, he could not help but smile. When Housekeeper Song saw Hong Zhong previously, he was far less enthusiastic. This is not strange at all. It's human nature. Young hero Lin, you still don't know that this guy made a deal with Wang Tong and the others to deal with the Hong Chamber of Commerce yesterday. Although he already knows that we took out 100 top-grade elixirs, this is really a scam. However, in comparison, he has a better relationship with the Hong Chamber of Commerce. It's understandable for businessmen to pursue profits. Hong Zhong was already used to it. He had been to the far north island dozens of times. It was normal for him to bribe a few spies. What the North Garrison Guards did yesterday did not escape his eyes. Then he really is a weirdo. Lin Yi suddenly laughed and was speechless. Just as the two of them were talking, there was another commotion in the venue, and the source of the commotion this time was because the group from Middle Island had entered the venue. Tian Chan. Lin Yi's eyes immediately focused on the yellow figure. Just like yesterday, she was still dressed in yellow. If it was said that there was a slight possibility of mistaken identity due to the dark sky yesterday, then this time, Lin Yi was 100% sure that this woman was Tian Chan. Facing Lin Yi's gaze, Tian Chan did not respond at all, just like last night. Although it could be attributed to the fact that there were too many people, Lin Yi believed that she must have seen him, but he did not know why. She was just deliberately ignoring him. At this moment, Lin Yi's eyebrows suddenly twitched slightly because he saw a very conspicuous red-haired man among the group of people from Middle Island. His expression was frivolous, and he was about to reach out and put his arm around Tian Chan's waist. Lin Yi suddenly could not contain his anger. He had vaguely guessed the reason. He was afraid that this person was the reason why Tian Chan refused to acknowledge him. It had been half a year since he came to Heaven Level Island. It was not a long time, but it was not a short time either. In this completely unfamiliar and cruel world of cultivation, anything could happen. It was understandable that women in the secular world would be with other men in order to find a backer. Murong Zhen, a woman from a village on Heaven Level Island, was already like this, not to mention the people in the secular world. It was not difficult to understand how Kong Mingming fawned on her. However, it was possible for others, but for Tian Chan, in Lin Yi's opinion, it was absolutely impossible. The relationship between two people was built on the edge of life and death, so it should not deteriorate so easily. However, looking at the scene in front of him, even the usually calm Lin, he could not suppress the monstrous anger bursting from the bottom of his heart. Young hero Lin, don't be impatient. Hong Zhong, who was next to him, immediately sensed Lin Yi's unusual behavior and quickly held him down with one hand. He did not know why Lin Yi was suddenly so agitated, but he knew that if Lin Yi lost control on the spot, even he would not be able to protect Lin Yi. With Hong Zhong's strength, it was more than enough to suppress Lin Yi. In addition, Lin Yi had been restraining himself, so the others did not notice anything unusual. I'm fine. In the blink of an eye, Lin Yi had already calmed down because he had just seen Tian Chan avoid the red-haired man without a trace. This at least meant that Tian Chan did not want to be with the red-haired man. As long as Tian Chan did not want to be with him, then everything else was just fleeting clouds in Lin Yi's eyes. It could not disturb his state of mind at all. It's good that you're fine. Young hero Lin, no matter what you want to do, I will help you. However, you must see the situation clearly, act according to your capabilities, and wait for the right opportunity to act. Hong Zhong comforted him. When Lin Yi heard that, his heart warmed. Originally, the relationship between him and Hong Zhong was purely based on interests. Now, it had gradually developed into a friendship, despite the difference in age. To be able to make a businessman like Hong Zhong say such words, it was clear that his help this time was not in vain. That red-haired man, do you know who he is, Manager Hong? Lin Yi changed the topic and asked. Hong Zhong took a closer look and replied, I have seen that person a few times when I was at the headquarters of Middle Island. His name is Zheng Tianjie, and he is from the Pill Hall. His grandfather seems to be the deputy hall master of the Pill Hall. His qualifications and connections are extremely deep, and his position in the Pill Hall is extremely high. Zheng Tianjie? In that case, he is also a proper third-generation cultivator. Lin Yi nodded thoughtfully. As the people from Middle Island took their seats, all the forces had arrived. With Stewart Song's loud and clear introduction, this rare Four Islands Auction Expo finally began its final prelude. Generally speaking, at the beginning of any auction, the items that were put up for auction could only be regarded as appetizers. All the good items would definitely be left for the finale. However, this Four Islands Auction Expo was far superior to the previous North Island auctions in terms of standard and grade. Even if it was just the first item that was put up for auction, it was not a small matter. Chapter 4016. It was similar to a marine creature, but vaguely resembled a human. This was the legendary existence of the North Sea, just like mermaids. Looking at this scene, even Lin Yi was stunned. Don't forget, on the way to the extreme North Island, they were just attacked by this legendary sea beast. At that time, they were only attacked by the song of the siren, and didn't see the appearance of the sea beast. Now they could make up for it. Sea beasts can be auctioned in this kind of auction. Lin felt a little incredulous. He had heard from the ghost that although the spirit beast clan couldn't completely stop human cultivators from hunting spirit beasts, at least in such a formal public place, no one would dare to openly attack spirit beasts. Sea beasts are sea beasts, and spirit beasts are spirit beasts. These are two different things. The spirit beast clan has never conquered the sea, and naturally they won't protect any sea beasts. The ghost said disapprovingly in his mind. Lin was speechless. At first glance, the sea beast cub looked like a human baby, and even its cry was the same. However, he didn't intend to intervene. After all, the spiritual jades at hand were limited, and he still needed to bid for the 6 casting materials listed by the King of Junk. He couldn't afford to lose. However, Lin Yi's lack of interest didn't mean that others had the same idea. The Sea Demon clan's heaven-defying racial talent was destined to become a powerful killing machine once they were tamed as spiritual pets. Therefore, there were actually many people who had thoughts about this young sea demon. Immediately, someone raised his paddle and called out a price. 3,100 spiritual jades. 3,200 spiritual jades. For a time, the bidding sounds came one after another. The base price of 3,000 spiritual jades was not a small number for most people, but there were still so many people scrambling for it. The value of the sea beast cub was obvious. However, the next voice made everyone shut up. 6,000 spiritual jades. I heard that if the sea beast cub is killed and stewed, it has a miraculous effect on nourishing and beautifying. It's just right for you, Junior Sister Tian-chan. I'll accept it on your behalf. The person who spoke was the red-haired man from the middle island, Zhang Tianjia. Hearing this, the people present couldn't help but show reluctance, but there was nothing they could do. From more than 3,000 spiritual jades to 6,000 spiritual jades, the price had almost doubled. None of the people who were qualified to attend this auction were from poor families. However, spirit jades did not fall from the sky for no reason. Everyone had their own plans. It was clearly not worth it to ruin their plans for a mere baby siren. 6,000 spiritual jades. Zhang Tianjia took the sea beast cub without hesitation. However, Tian-chan, whom he was trying to please, didn't say a word. Throughout the auction, Tian-chan, there was not even a slight change in her expression. Zhang Tianjia seemed to be used to this and didn't find it boring. Tian-chan had always been a cold beauty in front of him, but it didn't matter. He was rich, and today was a rare occasion for him to be in the limelight. He always had a way to win the beauty's smile. For the next few auctions, this 4 Islands auction actually became a one-man show for Zhang Tianjia. Every time, others would increase the price by 100 or 200, but when it came to Zhang Tianjia, he would directly double it. He didn't even blink. His grandfather was the deputy hall master of the Pill Hall. Things like spiritual jades were abundant in his family, and he couldn't afford to lose them. Unless those super chambers of commerce came forward to compete with him, no one else was his opponent. They were not on the same level. This Shan Pao. Lin was speechless. If this guy wasn't by Tian-chan's side, he wouldn't even bother to look at him. But now he had to pay attention to him. However, immediately after that, Lin found himself in trouble. This Shan Pao, who didn't lack spiritual jades, was simply super annoying at times. A set of 10 pieces of casting equipment, each of which is recognized by the blacksmiths as the best casting material. The rate of suitability can reach more than 80%, and the starting price is 10,000 spiritual jades. After Housekeeper Song finished his introduction, the audience immediately went into a small uproar. This was the first auction item with a starting price of 5 digits, spiritual jades. Listening to this introduction, Lin couldn't help but be stunned. As early as the first day, he came to the extreme North Island. He had already searched everywhere and found 4 of the 6 kinds of casting materials that he needed. Yesterday, he also found the remaining 2. In order to bid for all these materials, he thought that today would be a long battle, but he didn't expect such a sudden change. Many casting materials were combined into a set and auctioned together, and the 6 kinds of casting materials were all in it. Such a change really caught Lin Yi off guard. He completely didn't consider this aspect of the bidding beforehand, and more importantly, this was Zhang Tianjia's special auction. Lin Yi currently had 15,000 spiritual jades on hand. If it was only the 6 materials that were auctioned separately, it would be more than enough. However, if it was a set of 10 pieces, it would be somewhat insufficient. Without further ado, Lin Yi could only bite the bullet and make a preemptive bid. 15,000 spiritual jades. The audience was in an uproar, and the focus of the crowd instantly focused on Lin Yi. They had always thought that Lin Yi was only a small worker in the Hong Merchant Association, but now it was obvious that he wasn't. After all, in such an important occasion, which merchant association would treat it as child's play to let a small worker bid? The crowd was still in an uproar, but there were 3 people in the crowd who were dumbfounded when their gazes landed on Lin Yi. These 3 people were none other than Nan Tianba, Southern Sky Gate, and Yu Jie, whom Lin Yi had been wary of. With Nan Tianba's background and status, he naturally had a way to enter the Northern Island auction. However, they were purely here to bid, so they didn't arrive early like Lin Yi and Hong Zhong. They had only arrived at the Northern Island last night, so they didn't know anything about the commotion that had just occurred. Any normal person wouldn't believe that a mere grassroots newcomer like Lin Yi could actually come to such a high-class place. If he hadn't bid, perhaps Nan Tianba and the other 2 wouldn't have noticed his existence until the end of the auction. Why is this brat here? It seems like even if I don't get anything good from this trip, it won't be a wasted trip. Nan Tianba bared his teeth, while Southern Sky Gate and Yu Jie both smiled sinisterly. Chapter 4017. 15,000 spirit jades as soon as he opens his mouth. This kid is quite arrogant. It seems like he still has a lot of spirit jades on him. Yu Jie's eyes lit up. Don't be impatient. Once the auction is over, we'll find a chance to make our move. This time, we can't let him escape. If there's a mistake, we won't let it go. The Southern Sky Gate sneered. Even if they couldn't find the star ink stone on Lin Yi, it wouldn't be bad if they could get a large amount of spirit jades. Lin Yi's focus was on Tianchan the whole time, so he didn't notice Nan Tianba and the other 2. After he finished speaking, no one else followed up, suddenly increasing the price by 5,000 spirit jades. Even those who were originally interested had to think it over carefully. However, before Lin Yi could relax, Zhang Tianjia had already stood up. 20,000 spirit jades. Lin Yi's heart sank. Then he saw Zhang Tianjia glancing at him disdainfully. TCH, I don't know where this beggar came from, but he dares to pretend to be rich in front of me. You really are a country bumpkin who hasn't seen the world. The spirit jades that I casually throw away can easily crush you to death. Lin Yi coldly looked at the other party, but there was nothing he could do. The cleverest housewife couldn't cook without rice. He only had 15,000 spirit jades on him. It was impossible for him to win against this mountain cannon. However, if he let this 10-piece forging set pass him by, then his trip to the extreme North Island would be a complete waste. In the future, if he wanted to gather the 6 materials, who knew how much effort he would have to put in? At this moment, Hong Zhong, who was at the side, nodded to Lin Yi. Young hero Lin, just name your price. No matter how many spirit jades it is, our Hong merchant group will pay for it. This sentence was undoubtedly a timely help. Lin Yi didn't argue with Hong Zhong. After all, he had spared no effort to refine over 100 top-quality pills for him, so he could definitely accept this favor. 30,000 spirit jades. Lin Yi called out the price on the spot. He knew that if he wanted to compete with an idiot like Zhang Tianjia in a situation like this, he'd have to overwhelm his opponent with his aura. If it was just a small fight, not only would the opponent not back off, he'd only get more aggressive. From 20,000 to 30,000, this amount was enough to make everyone's eyelids twitch. They all cursed in their hearts. Damn it, another prodigal mountain cannon. This time, even Zheng Tianjie was stunned. As the first grandson of the deputy hall master of the pill hall, his identity was definitely that of a young master, even in Middle Island. He was so rich and powerful that almost no one could defeat him. In this Four Islands auction, apart from them, there were no other important figures from the Middle Island. As for the forces from the other four islands, they were nothing in his eyes. He did not take them seriously at all. As he as possible, he as spirit as spirit king on. 30,000 spirit jades? You talk big, but it's a pity that I won't let go of anything I fancy. In this set of 10 pieces, there is coincidentally a material that can be used not only for casting, but also for refining pills. I'm going to personally refine a grade 4 muscle beautifying pill for junior sister Tianchan, so that my junior sister's skin will always be smooth, firm, and glossy. Zhang Tianjie paused, then chuckled and said, "So, 50,000 spirit jades." As soon as he said that, the crowd was in an uproar again. Just for one material in the set of 10 pieces, he actually called out a price of 50,000 spirit jades. Moreover, this material was only used to refine the muscle beautifying pill that was useless for cultivation, just to please a woman. This Zhang Tianjie from the pill hall was really a spendthrift. Looking at this person's arrogant behavior, Lin Yi couldn't help but be speechless. At this crucial moment, he actually met this kind of idiot who didn't lack spirit jades. His luck was really bad. However, Lin Yi was determined to get these rare materials. Even if he had to spend a lot of spirit jades, he wouldn't hesitate. He immediately said, 60,000 spirit jades. Unexpectedly, Zhang Tianjie didn't even bat an eyelid and immediately said, 80,000 spirit jades. 100,000 spirit jades. Lin Yi also didn't hesitate and said again, Damn, you're ruthless. Zhang Tianjie instantly choked. Now that things had developed to this point, almost everyone present had been scared silly by the two of them. Although the materials used to forge the weapons were indeed rare, it was far from shocking. Now, it had been easily raised to the sky-high price of 100,000 spirit jades. It was simply unbelievable. Such a sky-high price was definitely not a small amount to any party. Even if Zhang Tianjie's family didn't lack spirit jades, he had to carefully consider whether it was worth it or not. After all, he was only bidding for these things to please a woman. Saying that he didn't do proper work was already very flattering for him. If he continued to fight with Lin Yi and his grandfather found out about this, he might be grounded for a month. That wouldn't be fun. Although Zhang Tianjie was an idiot, he wasn't a complete fool. At times like this, he still knew what was important. Immediately, he began to think of retreating. There was no need to get angry with a stranger he didn't know. Seeing the change in Zhang Tianjie's expression, Lin Yi was immediately happy. As long as this idiot backed down, no one else would compete with him for a mere 10 pieces of equipment. 100,000 spirit jades was a price that far exceeded its original value. No one would be stupid enough to continue bidding. As expected, Zhang Tianjie didn't speak. The rest of the people present all had a cold expression on their faces. They had no intention of participating in the competition. Seeing this, Housekeeper Song no longer hesitated and was about to make the final decision. 10 pieces of equipment could be sold for a sky-high price of 100,000 spirit jades. This time, the Four Islands auction really had a lot of fools. They would definitely make a killing. However, just as Lin Yi was about to heave a sigh of relief, Zhang Tianjie, who had clearly thought of retreating, suddenly called out a price again. With a ferocious and arrogant face, he said, Wait, 200,000 spirit jades. With just one sentence, the entire crowd erupted. 200,000 spirit jades? Damn it, what was wrong with this world? Did this Shan Pao take the wrong medicine? Lin Yi was also inexplicably shocked. He looked deeply at the arrogant Zhang Tianjie and couldn't figure out what was going on. It wasn't until Lin Yi noticed the strange look in Tian Chan's eyes that he realized what was going on. Chapter 4018. From her point of view, Lin Yi's unusual behavior of bidding against Zhang Tianjie was clearly to show his existence in front of her, to express his dissatisfaction with her previous indifference. I must thoroughly investigate this bumpkin's background when I return. He actually dared to rely on throwing spiritual jades to attract junior sister Tian Chan's attention in front of this young master. A toad wanting to eat swan meat. Do you think you're worthy? Zhang Tianjie scolded Lin Yi from afar while enjoying everyone's shocked gazes. The reason why he suddenly changed his mind was because of Tian Chan. He threw so many spiritual jades just to please Tian Chan, but now Tian Chan was actually paying attention to another man. How could he tolerate this? No matter how many spiritual jades he threw, he must trample on Lin Yi today. He must let this bumpkin who came out of nowhere know what a big shot of Middle Island was like. This strange turn of events really made Lin Yi stunned for a long time, but things did not end there. Lin Yi quickly calmed down and continued. Since you are in such a good mood, I will accompany you to the end. 300,000 spiritual jades. Humph, you want to compete with me? You do not know the immensity of heaven and earth. Today, I will smash you to death with spiritual jades. 500,000 spiritual jades, Zhang Tianjie said arrogantly. In order to show his face in front of Tian Chan, he was hysterical and did not care about the price. 500,000 spiritual jades? Lin Yi raised his eyelids, and just when everyone thought that the madman was going to keep fighting with the idiot Zhang Tianjie, he suddenly changed the topic. I actually just wanted to see how much money you have, that's all. I wasn't planning on buying this set in the first place, but since you're so sincere about it, I won't take it away from you. You can have the 500,000 spirit jades. With that, Lin Yi sat down leisurely, as if this matter really had nothing to do with him. He made such a big bet just to see the other party's capital? This invincible logic really shocked everyone present. As for Zhang Tianjie, he was stunned for a long time and couldn't react. After a long while, Zhang Tianjie slowly came back to his senses under the strange gazes of the surrounding people. No matter how brainless he was, he now knew that he had been completely fooled this time. F*CKU, you cunning country bumpkin. I'm going to tear you to pieces today. Zhang Tianjie was about to lose his temper on the spot. Even when he was in the Middle Island, he was used to being domineering. Now that he came to the edge of the northernmost island, he naturally had no scruples. Under the watchful eyes of the public, he was actually teased and provoked by a nobody like Lin Yi. It was unbearable. However, before Zhang Tianjie could lose his temper, Steward Song's eyes had already turned cold. Countless fully armed northern garrison soldiers were ready to attack. Even if Zhang Tianjie's identity was special, this was the northernmost island after all. There was only one owner, and that was Steward Song, who was acting as the island owner. If Zhang Tianjie was allowed to make trouble here, it would be no different than slapping his face in public. Regardless of status or strength, the northernmost island was an extremely special force among the Heaven Stage Islands. It was a special existence that transcended the 5 major islands. Although they were polite to the people from the Middle Island, they would never compromise. If Zhang Tianjie wanted to make trouble here, he was simply courting death. In the blink of an eye, the situation became tense. Everyone held their breaths as a conflict was about to unfold. Fortunately, the rest of the people from the Middle Island, beside Zhang Tianjie, got up in time to suppress him. They were not as arrogant and fearless as Zhang Tianjie. They knew that if they let things go on like this, they would only get themselves into trouble. What are you doing? Let me go. Are you trying to rebel? Zhang Tianjie did not give up. However, the people around him were no weaker than him. They worked together to suppress him. No matter how strong Zhang Tianjie was, he could not move for a while. Although this idiot's brain was not very good, his strength was shockingly strong. Lin Yi looked at this scene from afar. Even if he did not directly feel the aura emitted from Zhang Tianjie, he could indirectly feel the strength of the other party. He was not on the same level as Zhang Tianjie at all. Young hero Lin, there is actually no need for you to give in. Although 500,000 spiritual jades is a little too much, our Hong merchant group can still afford it. Hong Zhong, who was at the side, said, with the huge help that Lin Yi had given to the Hong merchant group this time, no matter how much spiritual jades he had, the Hong merchant group would definitely pay for him without hesitation. After all, during this period of time, although the Hong merchant group had been tricked by Wang Tong and the others and was extremely short of high-end resources, correspondingly, the flow of spiritual jades in their hands was extremely abundant. 500,000 spiritual jades was not a problem at all. There is no need for that. In my opinion, the value of this 10-piece set is not more than 30,000. Isn't it crazy to raise it to 500,000 just to spite a fool? Lin Yi shook his head and said he did not know how much the top-grade elixirs he refined for Hong Zhong would be sold at in the end, but it was already very kind that Hong Zhong had supported him to this point. There was no reason to waste spiritual jades at all. However, looking at Zhang Tianjie's ferocious expression from afar, which seemed to want to swallow him alive, Lin Yi also secretly cursed in his heart. Not only do you want to touch my woman, but you also want to steal my casting materials. Damn it, just wait and see. Lin Yi was also a ruthless person in the secular world. Even in the current North Island, he was a master who would kill whoever he disliked. This time he was really a little annoyed. Hearing Lin Yi say so, Hong Zhong did not say anything more. He immediately nodded and said, well, anyway, the casting materials you want should not be limited to this shop. I will think of a way later, and there should be a chance to help you gather them. However, Lin Yi replied with a non-committal Whoever started the trouble should end it. Now his mind was completely focused on Zhang Tianjie. Whether it was for Tian Chan or for the casting materials, he must end things with Zhang Tianjie. The main goal of this time was to lose the auction item, so the next auction had little to do with Lin Yi. Although with the spiritual jades in his hand and the support of Hong Zhong, his capital was not less than Zhang Tianjie's, and he was competitive enough for any rare auction item. It was a pity that Lin Yi's mind was not on this anymore. In fact, not only Lin Yi, but also Zhang Tianjie had lost interest in the auction after experiencing the twists and turns just now. Now he only wanted to do one thing, which was to go back and ask someone to find out the details of Lin Yi as soon as possible, and then find a chance to kill this ignorant bumpkin. Chapter 4019. In the end, after a whole day of intense auctions, the Four Islands auction finally came to an end at sunset. All the items provided by the Chambers of Commerce had been auctioned off. However, this didn't mean that the auction was over. On the contrary, this was only the first part of the auction. From the second day onwards, it would be an individual auction. Every participant who came to the North Island could take out their good stuff for auction. All kinds of rare treasures that had never been heard of or seen before would surface at that time. However, in today's auction alone, the more than 100 top-grade elixirs that Lin Yi had personally refined were unsurprisingly the most important and eye-catching items at the end of the auction. Even if the grade of the elixirs was not high, it was still a strategic elixir that only the core disciples of the super forces had the right to enjoy. Ordinary people couldn't even see it. Including the 10 elixirs from the Middle Island Alchemy Hall and the other major chambers of commerce, the number of top-grade elixirs in this Four Islands auction had reached an unprecedented 130 elixirs, and 80% of them came from the Hong Chamber of Commerce. 3 elixirs in a group, 5 elixirs in a group, and even 10 elixirs in a group. Every group of elixirs inevitably became a bomb that detonated the auction, constantly breaking the record of the transaction price. These astronomical figures, which made people unconsciously dry up just by listening to them, clearly illustrated to everyone the same concept. What was called, "There is a price but no supply." In the end, the Hong Chamber of Commerce had a great harvest. Relying on Lin Yi's more than 100 top-grade elixirs, the final transaction price actually reached more than 1,000,000 spiritual jades, which was simply astounding. On average, this price was more than 10,000 spiritual jades for each elixir, which was simply an unimaginable miracle in normal times. When Lin Yi sold the top-grade foundation establishment barrier-breaking elixirs to the Hong Chamber of Commerce, the discount was only 800 spiritual jades. Here, it had actually increased by more than 10 times. It had to be said that on occasions like auctions, there were indeed a lot of idiots who had too many spiritual jades. No wonder so many super chambers of commerce regarded this auction as a must-win, racking their brains and being ambitious. No matter what, after this battle, the Hong Merchant Guild could finally hold their heads high. In the beginning, they had been targeted by everyone in every possible way, but today they had reaped a great harvest. In this battle to turn the situation around, the Hong Merchant Guild could be said to have fought beautifully. The significance of this battle was far more than just earning 1,000,000 spiritual jades. If it weren't for these 100 or so top-grade elixirs, the Four Islands auction this time, under the joint attack of many super chambers of commerce like the Grand Chamber of Commerce and the All-Access Grand Chamber of Commerce, was very likely to become the Hong Chamber of Commerce's Waterloo. After that, they would be taken advantage of by others and disintegrated. This was not impossible, but extremely likely. But now, not only did the Hong Chamber of Commerce successfully resolve the crisis, but they also successfully gained a foothold. They even had the capital to wait for an opportunity to launch a counterattack. They even had the opportunity to attack. Then they would be able to take the opportunity to attack. If they handled it well, not only would they not suffer, but also they could take the opportunity to attack. All of this could be said to be due to Lin Yi's contributions. It was not an exaggeration to say that to the Hong Merchant Group, Lin Yi was a great benefactor who turned the tide. Young hero Lin, this old man will never forget the great kindness you have shown me this time. Even an experienced and prudent person like Hong Zhong couldn't help but be overjoyed when he saw the accounts. He bowed to Lin Yi repeatedly. This time, Lin Yi not only saved the Hong Chamber of Commerce, but more importantly, he also saved Hong Zhong. Otherwise, without Lin Yi's help, Hong Zhong would have become the scapegoat that the higher-ups pushed out to take the blame. "You're being too serious, Manager Hong. We've been working together for so long. Helping you is helping myself. Don't talk about gratitude. You're treating me like an outsider." Lin Yi hurriedly helped him up. However, Hong Zhong waved his hand and shook his head. Cooperation is cooperation, and kindness is kindness. I am still clear about this. I can't thank you enough for your kindness. I will remember it. Seeing that Hong Zhong insisted, Lin Yi could only let him be. He nodded and said, "Fine. I still need to rely on Manager Hong in the future. Let's have a long way to go." Hong Zhong chuckled and stroked his beard. Well said, well said. If young hero Lin has any requests, this old man will not hesitate to go through water and tread on fire. However, this time, young hero Lin has not only done this old man a personal favor, but also a great favor to the entire Hong Chamber of Commerce. This old man must get the higher-ups to express their gratitude. I don't think that's necessary. Lin Yi was a little worried. If Hong Zhong really said that to the higher-ups of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, wouldn't it mean that Hong Zhong wanted to repay his kindness? That would be a little inappropriate. Hong Zhong was old and shrewd. He could see through Lin Yi's concerns. He immediately smiled and said, "Young hero Lin, don't worry. We talk about kindness in private, but businessmen always pursue profit. There has always been only business cooperation. There is no such thing as kindness. So this time, you have to treat it as a business transaction. You helped the Hong Chamber of Commerce resolve such a big crisis. It's reasonable for you to ask for something in return. No one can blame you. Time will be wasted. So you have to think carefully about what you want in return. This logic was not difficult to understand. Lin Yi and Hong Zhong could talk about kindness, but the Hong Chamber of Commerce might not care about this. Lin Yi still had to get some substantial benefits as soon as possible. However, Lin Yi could not think of any benefits at the moment. He immediately asked, "What kind of return?" "Manager Hong, why don't you give me an idea?" In this old man's opinion, there are only two ways. One is to directly ask for spiritual jades. With young hero Lin's contribution this time, not only will all the auction proceeds belong to young hero Lin, but you can also ask for a reward of hundreds of thousands of spiritual jades. This is a real benefit, simple and practical. Young hero Lin, are you interested? Hong Zhong probed. What about the second one? Lin Yi asked. A reward of hundreds of thousands of spiritual jades was indeed tempting. But for Lin Yi, as long as he had the divine armament cauldron to refine pills, he could earn more spiritual jades in the future. In this way, it was not so attractive. As for the second one, it sounds a little fake. That is to take the opportunity to get a position in the Hong Chamber of Commerce. But young hero Lin, you are an outsider. No matter how great your contribution is, it is impossible to give you a position with real power. At most, it will be a nominal title. For example, this time you can try to fight for the title of honorary vice president. Hong Zhong smiled mysteriously. Honorary vice president? Isn't this a little exaggerated? Lin Yi's eyelids twitched. Chapter 4020. So, if shopkeeper Hong were to choose, which one would you choose? Lin Yi asked. Hong Zhong smiled. If I were to choose, I would definitely choose the second one. As long as you have enough power and status, you can have as many spiritual jades as you want. However, although this honorary vice president title is just a title, it at least represents status and privileges. Under normal circumstances, no amount of spiritual jades can buy it. When young hero Lin arrives at Middle Island, this title will make it much more convenient for you to do things. If that's the case, then I'll have to trouble shopkeeper Hong. Lin Yi immediately made up his mind. No matter what, he had to go to Middle Island in the future. Since Hong Zhong had already said so, there was no need to hesitate. Young hero Lin is indeed decisive. Once you fill in this appointment letter, you will be the honorary vice president of our Hong Chamber of Commerce. Hong Zhong smiled as he took out an appointment letter and handed it to Lin Yi. Obviously, he had already communicated with the headquarters. Then, from now on, we will be colleagues. However, since I am the honorary vice president, then shopkeeper Hong. Lin Yi was slightly stunned and then smiled. If he had chosen spiritual jades, Hong Zhong would not have taken out this appointment letter. However, Hong Zhong knew him well and knew that he would definitely choose the position of vice president. This incident happened so suddenly. It's certain that someone is behind it, but within the Hong Chamber of Commerce, there must be someone who doesn't sit properly. Hong Zhong smiled meaningfully. Settling accounts after autumn is the right time. Speaking of which, it has been a long time since this old man has moved from his seat. Lin Yi smiled knowingly. Then I will wait for shopkeeper Hong's promotion. Just as Lin Yi was talking to Hong Zhong, the entire Heroes Gathering Hall was in chaos. There was no other reason. Zhang Tianjie was sending people everywhere, trying to find ways to investigate Lin Yi's background. Tian Chan knew that she couldn't continue watching the situation develop in the direction that she didn't want to see the most. Otherwise, the situation would change. Things might really get out of hand. Thinking of this, Tian Chan immediately found a powerful female cultivator. Her name was Lien Xan, and she was the master that Tian Chan had acknowledged in the alchemy hall after being teleported to Heaven Stage Island. Chan, come find master in the middle of the night. What's the matter? Lien Xan looked at Tian Chan with a gentle gaze. She was very fond of this new disciple that she had accepted not long ago and had always treated her as her own. Tian Chan bowed respectfully and took out a pill from her bosom. She had specially bid for it during the auction during the day. Master, regardless of the quality of these elixirs, they are considered the best, even among the best. I'm just a little puzzled. The Hong Chamber of Commerce has never been known for elixirs. So how did they get their hands on such high-quality elixirs, and more than 100 of them at once? Tian Chan pretended to be puzzled. This question, Lien Xan and the others had been thinking about it for a long time. That's right. Even the Five Elements Pharmacy, which has always been famous for its elixirs, only took out 10 of them this time. The Hong Chamber of Commerce actually took out more than 100 of them at once. It's really unbelievable. If this continues, the Five Elements Pharmacy might be squeezed out by them. Tian Chan immediately agreed. That's right. The Five Elements Pharmacy is an important source of income for the Alchemy Hall. We can't let anything happen to it. So, I feel that I should find a chance to investigate this clearly. Chan, I'm very pleased that you have such intentions. Lien Xan smiled gently. Then she said, Oh, right. Do you know that young man from the Hong Chamber of Commerce? I seem to have heard him call your name yesterday. Yes, I've seen him a few times in the secular world, but I'm not familiar with him. Tian Chan replied. Since that's the case, Chan, you can think of a way to ask him about the origins of these elixirs. Maybe you'll be able to find some clues. Lien Xan suggested. Sure enough, Lien Xan's words were exactly what Tian Chan wanted. She bid for this elixir precisely because of this intention. She wanted to be able to see Lin Yi properly. Yes, disciple understands. Tian Chan immediately left Lien Xan's room and turned to leave the Hall of Heroes. She had to pass on the news here to Lin Yi as soon as possible so that he could prepare early. Tian Chan's sudden visit really gave Lin Yi a pleasant surprise. From the first time he saw Tian Chan yesterday until now, Tian Chan's abnormal reaction had already become a big knot in Lin Yi's heart. During the day, there were many people around, especially when Zheng Tianjie was beside Tian Chan. Even if Lin Yi wanted to talk to Tian Chan, he didn't have the chance at all. After the auction ended, Tian Chan immediately returned to the Hall of Heroes with the others. Lin Yi was even more helpless. He didn't expect that she would take the initiative to visit him now. Tian Chan, are you all right? Lin Yi took a deep breath. He originally had a lot of things to say, but they turned into a simple greeting. Han Zhong, who was originally with him, smiled playfully when he saw this. He tactfully left the room and gave the two of them some space to be alone. After Han Zhong left, Tian Chan's originally cold expression gradually became complicated. Finally, there was a bit of the familiar warmth from the secular world. Thinking back to the little things that happened between the two of them in the secular world, it was so beautiful compared to now. She originally thought that after coming to Heaven Stage Island, it would be a wonderful journey that she yearned for, but she didn't expect the reality to be so cruel. It was unbearable to look back, and even if she wanted to escape, she couldn't. Thinking of the purpose of this trip, Tian Chan's mood immediately fell to the bottom. After a long time, Tian Chan's face darkened, and she lowered her head. Lin Yi, I'm sorry, what's wrong? Lin Yi's heart skipped a beat, and then he had a bad premonition. He quickly asked. Tian Chan lowered her head and didn't speak for a long time, with a sad expression on her face that was about to cry. Lin Yi quickly squeezed out a smile on his face and pretended to be enlightened. Oh, you're talking about the matter of deliberately not acknowledging me before, right? It's okay. After all, there are many people, and it's not a bad thing to be careful. I can understand, and you've already come to find me, right? I'm not that stingy. You're stingy. Tian-chan couldn't help but laugh, but then she tightened her face again and said with a serious face, Lin-Yi, I'm not joking with you anymore. I came to find you today to tell you one thing. From today onwards, don't come to find me again. And if you meet me in the future, you have to pretend that you're not familiar with me. Chapter 40:21. There's no why. If you want me to be well, then do as I say. Tian-chan forcefully held back the tears in her eyes. She tried her best to not appear so weak and aggrieved in front of Lin-Yi. She constantly told herself to be strong, or at least pretend to be strong. Lin-Yi took a deep breath, looked at Tian-chan, and said word by word, Tian-chan, actually we came all the way from the secular world. You should know what kind of person I am. If you can't give me a reasonable explanation, I will never give up unless you don't like me any more. Hearing this, Tian-chan's heart suddenly trembled. With her unforgettable feelings for Lin-Yi, how could she be willing to say such cruel words? It was every girl's most romantic dream to be together with the person they loved forever. Tian-chan was naturally no exception. However, reality did not allow it. If she did not let Lin-Yi let go now, it would not only be her who would be hurt, but Lin-Yi would also inevitably suffer a disaster. Instead of watching Lin-Yi die in front of her, it was better to forget about each other. Lin-Yi had so many confidants. Surely he would soon be able to heal the pain, right? Yes. I don't like you anymore. Tian-chan turned her head and did not look at Lin-Yi. Heaven Stage Island was not like the secular world. Anyone from here was more powerful than them. Tian-chan naturally did not want Lin-Yi to make an unnecessary sacrifice. Seeing Tian-chan's behavior, Lin-Yi frowned slightly, and then suddenly thought of something. Is it because of that Zhang Tianjia? Faced with Lin-Yi's interrogation, Tian-chan was suddenly shocked, but she pretended to be calm and said, Why do you have so many questions? If you ask again, I will kick you. After half a year, hearing Tian-chan's familiar mantra again, Lin-Yi couldn't help but feel sour in his heart. He suddenly opened his arms and pulled Tian-chan into his embrace, hugging her tightly. You. Tian-chan let out a soft cry, and when she regained her senses, her nose was already filled with Lin-Yi's scent, a familiar scent that she could never forget. Tian-chan struggled symbolically, but she couldn't break free from Lin-Yi's embrace. She immediately gave up trying. If it weren't for the cruel reality, she wouldn't have thought of breaking free from such a warm and comforting embrace. In the small room, under the candlelight, the couple hugged each other tightly, quietly feeling each other's heartbeat, unwilling to let go for a long time. After a long time, Lin-Yi stroked Tian-chan's hair. He asked, Now can you tell me why? I beg you don't ask. This matter doesn't benefit you at all. Just pretend that you didn't see me, okay? If I knew you would be here, I wouldn't have come to this auction. Tian-chan's delicate body trembled slightly in Lin-Yi's embrace. Her voice was filled with a pitiful sob. Lin-Yi still hugged her tightly in his arms. He reached out and patted her back lightly. He said slowly, Don't be afraid. There's always a way out. Trust me. As long as you tell me properly, there's always a way to solve everything. Tell me, is it because of that Zhang Tianjia? What did he do to you? At this point, Tian-chan couldn't hide it anymore. She could only admit, that's right. He's the direct grandson of our Pill Hall's deputy hallmaster. His grandfather said in front of everyone that he wants me to be engaged to him. Want you to be engaged to him? Ah, I think he's tired of living. Lin-Yi's eyes narrowed. Instantly, a murderous aura was revealed. Tian-chan covered Lin-Yi's mouth and shook her head. Don't worry. No matter what, I won't let him get away with it. However, he is an extremely jealous person. Anyone who has even the slightest bit of relationship with me, even if it's just a few words from my little junior brother, will inevitably explode during alchemy within a few days. Although there is no evidence, everyone knows that it's definitely his doing. It's just that under the tyranny of his grandfather, who is the vice hall master, no one dares to say anything. The Pill Hall's deputy hall master, what's his strength level? Lin Yi sighed and asked. At least above the golden core stage. Because Zhang Tianjie himself is already a golden core stage master. Tian Chan said with lingering fear, strength is only secondary. What's important is his grandfather's position. Because Hall Master Zhang is not around all year round, he is almost a person of authority in the Alchemy Hall. Only a few registered disciples of Master Zhang can ignore him and mind their own business. Other than that, in the entire Alchemy Hall, he can be considered the most arrogant existence. Zhang Liju's disciple? Then, since he received Zhang Liju's inheritance in the common world, did that mean he was also Zhang Liju's disciple? Lin Yi mumbled, but didn't say much to Tian Chan. He just nodded. All right, I understand. Looking at Lin Yi's calm face, Tian Chan felt that something was wrong. She smiled bitterly. Even if we don't talk about his grandfather, Zhang Tianjie alone is already super hard to deal with. Golden core stage masters aren't people we can fight at all. Lin Yi, don't do anything stupid. It's better if we pretend that we don't know each other. If we get too close, it might bring disaster to you. Lin Yi smiled noncommittally. What's going to come will come, eventually. I can't pretend that I don't know you just because of some bullshit like this. Tian Chan was a little touched, but panicked at the same time. She kicked Lin Yi lightly. It's true, I'm not joking with you. You've already caught his attention when you competed with him at the auction today. He's already looking for people to investigate you, so you have to be careful these few days. Don't give him any chances to take advantage of you. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Lin Yi nodded on the surface, but his heart was already filled with killing intent. The current situation was such that even if he didn't take the initiative to cause trouble for Zhang Tianjie would definitely cause trouble for him. Moreover, because of what happened to Tian Chan, they were already irreconcilable enemies. Plus, if he were to think further, he'd go to Zhongdao to ask for Zhang Liju's help. Leaving a bastard like Zhang Tianjie behind would only bring him a lot of unnecessary trouble. He might as well use this chance to kill him, and that'd be the end of it. Seeing Lin Yi's reaction, Tian Chan thought that he heard what she said just now. She let out a sigh of relief. She didn't care what happened to her, but if she killed Lin Yi because of her, she would really regret it for the rest of her life. Chapter 4022. Staying in the small room, Tian Chan buried herself in Lin Yi's arms for a long time before she reluctantly left Lin Yi's embrace. If the conditions allowed, she even hoped that she could hide in this warm embrace for the rest of her life. However, she came here in the name of finding Lin Yi to find out about the origin of the elixir. If she stayed for too long, it would definitely arouse suspicion, especially if Zhang Tianjie found out that she was meeting Lin Yi at night. Lin Yi would not be far from death. In the end, Lin Yi watched Tian Chan leave reluctantly in the night. He did not have any worries about his children. On the contrary, his heart was filled with murderous intent. He'd made up his mind to get rid of that idiot Zhang Tianjie from the very beginning. After all, Zhang Tianjie had already sent people to investigate him, and if he really did manage to find out more about him, it'd be too easy for him to give himself away when the time came. Putting on the 1,000 silk mask, Lin Yi immediately got up and went to the Hall of Heroes. However, the first problem he encountered was how to sneak into the Hall of Heroes without alerting the guards. Originally, according to the Northern Guard's explanation, if he came with Tian Chan, Lin Yi could actually go in directly. However, this operation was of great importance. Any carelessness could lead to disaster. Lin Yi did not want Tian Chan to be involved in any way, so he had to figure out a way himself. His early career as an assassin had taught Lin Yi one thing. There was never an impenetrable wall in the world. No matter how tight the guards were, as long as he waited patiently, he would always find an opportunity. As expected, Lin Yi waited in the dark for a full 4 hours, taking advantage of the fact that the North Guard was changing shifts, and finally grasped the opportunity. He exerted his full speed and successfully climbed over the wall before the new round of guards arrived. After entering the Hall of Heroes, the next problem was how to find Zheng Tianjie. Of course, there was an even bigger and more crucial problem, and that was how to kill Zheng Tianjie. Don't forget, Tian Shan had already said that although Zheng Tianjie was an alchemist, he was an out-and-out gold core stage expert, a powerful existence that was completely above all the foundation establishment stage experts. The powerful aura that he had inadvertently revealed during the auction during the day was already very clear. On the other hand, Lin Yi himself was only in the middle stage of the foundation establishment stage. At most, he would be considered invincible among the newcomers in the Welcome Pavilion. In this northernmost island, in front of Zheng Tianjie, who was at the Golden Core stage, he couldn't even withstand a single blow. If they really fought, Zheng Tianjie wouldn't even need to show his face and could easily crush Lin Yi into pieces. Although in my eyes a master of the Gold Core stage is nothing, but for the current you it's not a big deal. Even if he was an idiot or a fake Gold Core stage cultivator, he was still a big deal. Kid, before you make a move, you have to think clearly. Even the ghost was surprised by Lin Yi's plan. The situation forced me, and I was forced to do it. But with Senior's vision, if I release the new move that I recently researched, is it possible to kill a master of the Gold Core stage? Lin Yi responded in his mind. This, you've really stumped me. A mid-stage foundation establishment cultivator instantly killing a Golden Core cultivator. Even with my many years of experience, I have never heard of it. After all, that's something that shouldn't normally happen. The ghostly thing paused for a moment before continuing. However, that move of yours was quite original. A true chi bomb can kill a master of the peak late stage of the foundation establishment stage. This move seems to be even better, and there should be some chance of success. Hearing the ghost's words, Lin Yi suddenly laughed. Not to mention some chance, even if there is only one chance. I have to try this time. If I can't kill Zheng Tianjie with such a rare opportunity, there'll be no more chances when he goes back to the Middle Island. Even if it was just for Tian Shan, Lin Yi had to find a way to kill Zheng Tianjie today. Otherwise, if Zheng Tianjie went back and forced Tian Shan to get engaged, he would not be able to help at all in the far North Island. How could he be worthy of being Tian Shan's man then? Carefully holding his breath and hiding his body, Lin Yi secretly looked around the heroes' gathering hall, but he could not find Zheng Tianjie. Of course, this was because he did not dare to get too close. After all, even apart from the Northern Guard, the people who lived in the heroes' gathering hall were all masters, and there were many masters above the Gold Core stage. With Lin Yi's strength, if he got too close, he would be courting death. But he'd have to take a risk if he couldn't find the person he was looking for. At this moment, several people appeared from the main gate of the heroes' gathering hall and hurried to a building opposite the guest rooms. Judging from the familiar sign, it should be an alchemy room specially prepared for guests. Lin Yi had used it before, but it was just outside the heroes' gathering hall. Lin Yi's heart skipped a beat. When he was looking around, he had been to all the other places except the alchemy room. Could it be that Zheng Tianjie was inside? This was not surprising. The reason why he bid with him for the 10-piece set of casting equipment during the day was to get one of the materials to refine the 4th-grade muscle beautifying pill to please Tian Shan. At this moment, it was reasonable for him to refine the pill at night. As expected, after those people waited at the door for a while, the door of the alchemy room opened and the person who walked out was Zheng Tianjie. What kind of **T efficiency is this? It's just investigating the background of a country bumpkin. With our alchemy hall's intelligence network, it actually took such a long time. What a useless, good-for-nothing. Fortunately, This young master hasn't started refining the flesh beauty pill yet. Otherwise, if I were to be disturbed by you halfway and cause the refining to fail, causing junior sister Tian-chan to be disappointed in this young master, can you bear the responsibility? Zhang Tianjie scolded them to their faces. Those people shrunk their necks and did not dare to talk back. They let Zhang Tianjie scold them for a while. When his anger subsided, they followed Zhang Tianjie to a room not far from the alchemy room to report the information they had found. Seeing this, Lin Yi did not follow them to eavesdrop. Instead, he pondered for a while and slipped into the alchemy room. From what Zhang Tianjie said just now, it was easy to tell that this guy would definitely come back to refine the muscle beautifying pill after listening to those people's reports. For Lin Yi, this was simply a godsend opportunity. You're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.